Chapter 23:39. Jinshin's face changed drastically. He retreated without any hesitation, but the vital energy was just too fast. In the end, it still struck Jinshin with great force. Spurt! Jinshin spat out a mouthful of blood as he was blown away. The vital energy was just too terrifying. Even with the defense of the chaotic body, he was still heavily injured. The eruption of the vital energy within the ancient ape immediately caused the sea of blood to churn. At the same time, the ancient wills that filled the cavern seemed to be alarmed as well, rousing from their slumber. Through his extraordinary soul, Jinshin immediately sensed that wills seemed to be awakening in the cavern, which made his face darken. Don't get within 100 kilometers of the ancient great ape. How many years has it been? Finally, someone has come here. It's a pity that he's too weak. The wills all awakened from their slumber as the mental pulses reverberated through the cavern. 8 blurry figures appeared around Jinshin one by one. 2 of the 8 figures were extremely familiar to Jinshin. The first was a beautiful woman. She had a pair of golden wings on her back. She seemed exactly the same as the 7th corpse he had seen outside. The only difference was that the 7th corpse was over 300 meters tall, while the one before him was only the size of a normal person. The second familiar figure was the human clan expert he had seen outside. He was surrounded by a vast aura of righteousness. Jinshin glanced past the other 6 figures. There were men and women of various ages, and they were all illusionary. How could Jinshin not understand when he saw that? The remaining 6 figures were the 6 colossal ancient beasts he had seen at the beginning. However, they did not reveal their original forms right now. They all appeared as humans. Junior Jinshin greets the 8 seniors. Jinshin immediately clasped his fist at the 8 illusionary figures. He showed respect from the bottom of his heart. This was respect for the strong. This was because he knew that the 8 figures before him had possessed extremely terrifying strength when they were alive. They could destroy the world with a flip of their hand. The 8 experts all looked at Jinshin. When they studied Jinshin, they could not help but shake their heads. Their faces were filled with undisguised disappointment. He really is too weak. We've waited for so many years, and all we've been waiting for is such a weak junior. Sigh. He's already awakened our wills. We don't have much time left. It's impossible for the wills we left behind in the past to continue existing. Once they awaken, they'll disperse before long. But he probably won't be able to complete our mission. We have no choice. Let's try it. The 8 experts converse with one another. They all seem to be filled with deep helplessness. Jinshin seemed to have understood something as well. He clasped his hands at the 8 experts and said, "Seniors, may I ask what you want me to do? If there's anything I can do, and if it's within my abilities, I will definitely do my best to help." The illusionary figures of the 8 experts hovered in the air. After hearing Jinshin's words, they all fell into a momentary silence. A while later, the human experts said, "You've already seen Gusta's body. I believe you understand that the 8 of us only exist to provide enough vital energy to nourish Gusta's body." "Gusta? The huge ape without a head?" Jinshin asked. "That's right. That huge ape's name is Gusta. He's the strongest king of the ancient great apes. Gusta died many years ago. His head was chopped off by someone. Although he seems to have died, he's not completely dead. There's still a sliver of life left in him." The experts of the ancient great apes wholeheartedly want to revive Gusta. So the 8 of us have been trapped here by the other 2 kings of the ancient great apes. They've used an ancient secret technique to strip us of our vital energy to revive Gusta, said the human expert. Jinshin's heart skipped a beat when he heard that. He had originally thought that the 8 experts had died in battle outside, and their corpses had been collected and placed here. He had never thought that the 8 of them would be trapped here while they were still alive. Every single one of the 8 experts was extremely powerful. Even though they had died many years ago, they still made Jinshin shiver inside. He struggled to imagine just how terrifying the person who could trap 8 terrifying experts here was. At this moment, the winged woman said, "The ancient great apes want to use the 8 of us to revive their strongest king. so we obviously won't let them succeed. Not only will we not let them succeed, but we'll also completely destroy Gusta's body as well. However, the 8 of us have already died in the end. All that's left is a sliver of unwilling will from when we were alive. We're unable to complete what comes next. The woman looked at Jianshan deeply and said, "As a result, we can only leave the matter of destroying Gusta's body to you." Jianshan's heart sank when he heard that. He said bitterly, "Seniors, I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. I'm too weak, and I can't even approach Gusta's body, let alone destroy it." Jianshan groaned inside, let alone the fact that he did not have the power to destroy Gusta's body. Even if he could, he would not be willing to do so. This was because once he did that, he would completely offend the ancient great apes. "Don't worry. We've already prepared everything when we were alive. We just don't have the power to carry it out ourselves." The human expert said, "We've already engraved layers of forbidden techniques in our bodies. Once they're activated, they'll connect our bodies and fuse the remaining vital energy in our bodies. Even though our vital energy has been constantly drained over the past few years, and we don't have much left, if all 8 of us are combined, we'll be able to surpass any one of us when we were at our peak. With such a terrifying amount of vital energy, we'll be able to destroy Gusta's body with the most powerful strike we can unleash through the formation. My bloodline contains the power of curses. I won't let the ancient great apes off so easily after what they've done to me. Not only will I destroy Gusta's body, but I'll also use Gusta's bloodline as a guide to cast my curse on the entire ancient great apes across the vast expanse of space and time. I'll make them pay a heavy price." An old man with a hooked nose said hatefully, "The ancient great ape clan should be completely annihilated." The other figures formed by the ancient beasts also spoke, their hatred overflowing to the heavens. Chapter 2340. You don't need to worry. We won't mistreat you. Moreover, you won't be hunted down by the experts of the ancient great apes. This is because formations have already been set up before us in this deep underground cavern. Coupled with the suppression of our presence, your weak presence won't be able to remain here at all. Moreover, the heavenly secrets here have been disturbed by the powerful wills of the 8 of us when we were alive, disrupting the laws here. As a result, even techniques like turning back time will be useless here. Without any exaggeration, you won't be able to leave behind any traces of what you've done in this cavern. It's obviously impossible for the experts of the ancient great apes to find you, said the human expert. If you help us, the 8 of us will give you a fortuitous encounter. We definitely won't let you do anything that is strenuous and unrewarding, said the winged woman. A fortuitous encounter? May I ask what kind of fortuitous encounter it is? Jinshan became interested. The 8 people before him must have been renowned peak experts when they were alive, so the fortuitous encounters they left behind probably wouldn't be too bad. We can give you our golden cores of laws. Kid, I wonder if that's enough, said a burly, red-haired, middle-aged man among the 8 of them. A golden core of laws. Jinshan could not help but cry out when he heard that. When an expert's comprehension of the laws of the world reached a certain level, it would form a spring of laws. This spring was the crystallization of the laws of the world after they had been condensed. It contained the mysteries of the laws of the world, which was why it was known as a golden core of laws. If I obtain your golden cores of laws, will I be able to reach your level in a short amount of time? Jinshan's interest was piqued. The burly, red-haired, middle-aged man became angered. He bellowed out, Kid, you sure are daydreaming. You want to reach our level in a short amount of time with just a golden core of laws. Do you really think it's that easy to comprehend the laws of the world? A golden core of laws can only be preserved through special ancient methods, so that the comprehension of laws within it won't disperse after we die. However, when we left behind our golden cores of laws, we were basically on the verge of death, so the comprehension of laws stored in our golden cores of laws is naturally less than 1/10 of what it was in our peak condition. However, even with that being the case, a golden core of laws can allow a deity to reach the primordial realm within 1,000 years. Apart from the golden core of laws, We've prepared 3 strands of vital energy. The energy within each strand of vital energy can increase your strength by quite a lot with your current level of cultivation. Apart from that, we'll pass you the Supreme's secret techniques that we've created. We've spent countless years perfecting these secret techniques, so we're not to lose them. The remaining experts spoke one after another, promising all types of benefits. It had to be mentioned that the rewards they offered were extremely plentiful, tempting even Jianshan to the point where he found it very difficult to turn them down. All right, I agree. But what should I do now? Jianshan asked. We only have a sliver of wool left now, and will truly disperse from the world before long. In order to prevent you from going back on your word, swear to the laws of the world first, all right? Jianshan immediately swore to the laws of the world. Sure enough, after swearing the oath, he discovered with his sharp senses that an invisible restraint seemed to have appeared around him. He knew that this was the restraint of the oath, so he immediately ignored it. Instead, under the guidance of the 8 experts' wills, he arrived beside their bodies. Afterwards, the bodies condensed from the wills of the 8 experts formed hand seals in the air. In the next moment, 8 beams of golden light, dragging long tails of golden flames behind them, streaked through the air and hovered in front of them. Jianshan looked at the 8 golden cores of laws that shone with resplendent light. Even though the golden cores of laws seemed the same on the surface, they actually contained 8 completely different laws. The 8 laws were the laws of curses, the laws of strength, the laws of corrosion, the laws of creation, the laws of fire, the laws of destruction, the laws of the sword, and the laws of space. On the other hand, the righteous human tribe powerhouse had left behind a sword Dao nomological law. If you want to activate our formation and destroy Gusta's body, you need to comprehend our power of laws first. Only then will you be able to come into contact with our bodies and awaken the final power hidden in our bodies, Gusta said with a smile. And if you want to awaken the final power hidden within our bodies, you need to reach the Divine King's level of comprehension of laws. This is because only the Divine King's level of comprehension of laws can awaken the final power hidden within our bodies. Once the power hidden within the 8 of us is awakened, we need a primordial realm expert to channel energy into the center of the formation and activate the formation we've cast down. Once the formation is activated, the vital energy within the 8 of us will fuse together under the influence of the formation, and we'll unleash a powerful strike that will destroy Gusta's body and destroy the ancient great apes' plan to revive their strongest king. The supreme secret techniques that the 8 of us created are all hidden in the golden core of laws, fusing with the power of laws contained within. Those who inherit our golden core of laws will be able to grasp the supreme secret techniques that we created, said Yi Qingyu. Kid, are you ready? Prepare to inherit our power of laws, the wills of the wills said. Afterwards, they prepared to fuse the golden cores of laws into Jinshan's body. Hold on. Don't tell me you want me to inherit all 8 of your laws by myself? Comprehending 8 laws at the same time will affect my cultivation speed. Jianshan stopped them in a hurry. If he really did comprehend all 8 laws, it would mean that he would have to spend several times more time cultivating than usual. You're the only one here, and these 8 laws are the only way to awaken the power hidden within our bodies. As a result, only you can inherit the 8 laws, because these 8 golden cores of laws can't be brought outside. Once they're brought outside, no matter what method you use to conceal them, you won't be able to conceal them from the workings of the heavens. They'll be discovered. Once the experts of the ancient great ape clan discover them, all our preparations will be for naught. Our wills are about to disperse. We can't wait for you to find someone outside, so we have no other choice but to let you inherit the 8 laws by yourself. Hold on. Who said I'm the only one here? With a thought, the Inata Tower appeared. He called out Kea first. Afterwards, he stowed the Inata Tower away and placed the Divine Hall on the ground. He called out, Qing Yishuan, Heya, come out. Chapter 2341. The Inata Tower. I never thought that you would actually possess one of the three supreme treasures of the Inata Grand Prime, the Inata Tower. The Inata Tower is a god artifact of the highest quality. At the same time, it's one of the most powerful god artifacts in the world. I never thought that it would be damaged to such a degree. To be able to damage the Inata Tower to such a degree, it must be one of the sovereigns of the world who has reached the limits of Grand Prime. From the sword slashes on the Inata Tower, the Inata Grand Prime has probably fought the greatest expert of the Immortals world, the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt. It looks like many things have happened in the Saint's world after we died. It's extremely likely that the immeasurable calamity has descended. However, none of that has anything to do with us. The 8 experts all sighed emotionally with mixed feelings when they saw the Inata Tower. Clearly, even though they were only condensed from a sliver of their past, they still retained all their memories. Jianshun, where is this place? And who are they? Kaya asked in doubt as soon as she emerged from the Inata Tower. She studied the huge cavern before looking at the 8 experts before her. The light in her eyes flickered as surprise and doubt filled her face. She did not know why, but when she saw the illusory figures of the 8 great experts, she felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity. It was as if she had seen them before. Kaya could swear that she had never seen these people before, but she just had this feeling. Jianshun gave Kaya a simple explanation of what had happened here, allowing Kaya to gain a rough understanding of the situation. Afterwards, Heya and Qing Yishuan emerged from the Divine Hall as well. Currently, Heya's presence was much more powerful and dense than before. He had improved tremendously during his time in seclusion. With the assistance of the Flower of Ways and the large amounts of cultivation resources from Jianshun, Heya's current cultivation had reached the very peak of the Divine King's level of cultivation. He was preparing to break through to the primordial realm. As soon as Heya emerged from the Divine Hall, he stood behind Jianshun. Even though he was very curious about this place, he did not ask about it. He truly treated himself as a servant. Qing Yishuan bit her lip gently. She glanced at Jianshun and Kaya before silently making her way behind Jianshun. She stood beside Heya. Jianshun had not revealed his true appearance, while Kaya had not removed his disguise either. As a result, Qing Yishuan still failed to recognize Jianshun and Kaya. However, as soon as Qing Yishuan arrived behind Jianshun, she was pulled out by Jianshun. Jianshun pushed Qing Yishuan to the front without any explanation. He said to the human expert, "Senior, she also comprehends the laws of the sword. May I ask if she can inherit your legacy?" The comprehension of laws within the 8 golden cores of laws was extremely limited. It was nowhere close to a tenth of what the 8 experts possessed, let alone reaching the same heights as the 8 experts. Even breaking through to Chaotic Prime would be a luxury. It would basically only allow them to reach the primordial realm. Jianshun's current comprehension of the laws of the sword had already reached the late Divine King. He only needed to take another step and he would reach the primordial realm. Not only had his soul changed now, but his comprehension of the laws of the world had become even clearer. Moreover, he possessed the Fortune Jade, so he believed that this step would not take up much of his time. As a result, using the golden core of the laws of the sword on him would be a little too much of a waste. Not only would Qing Yishuan be able to help his old friend, but she would also be able to push the value of the golden core of laws to its greatest. Qing Yishuan was pushed out by Jianshun. She had no idea what had happened at all. Afterwards, she heard Jianshun talk about inheriting the legacy of the way of the sword, which immediately stunned her. She was completely stunned. The human expert hovering in the air looked at Qing Yishuan. After observing her for a moment, he nodded in satisfaction and said, "All right." With that, he did not even ask for Qing Yishuan's permission. The golden core of laws that hovered before him immediately shot into Qing Yishuan's forehead as a golden streak of light. Immediately, Qing Yishuan shone with golden light. Strands of extremely pure power from the laws of the sword revolved around her, causing her to close her eyes uncontrollably. She could not help but enter a state of comprehension, accepting the legacy. After seeing that Qing Yishuan had successfully inherited his inheritance, the human race expert seemed to have finally fulfilled the wish in his heart. He revealed a relieved smile as his illusory body slowly disappeared. A moment later, it scattered with the wind. Jinshin sighed inside as he watched the human experts will disperse. He knew that the righteous human expert had completely vanished from the world. Kea, you've comprehended the laws of creation, destruction, and fire, so you should inherit these 3 laws. Jinshin dismissed his emotions and turned to Kea. However, Kea remained calm. He did not become excited at all. He only glanced at the 3 golden cores of laws indifferently and said, I don't need them. You should inherit them. Kea. Jinshin frowned slightly. Jinshin, you should know that my path of comprehending laws is different from others. Their golden cores of laws of creation, destruction, and fire don't have much comprehension left. They really won't be of any help to me, Kea said seriously. When Jinshin thought that it was extremely likely that Kea was the reincarnation of an expert, he did not say anything more. In the end, he looked at Heiya and asked him which law he wanted to inherit. His talent is far too ordinary. If we give him the golden cores of laws, let alone the fact that it'll be a great waste, it won't be good for him if he wants to comprehend 2 laws at the same time with his talent. That's right. With his talent, all he needs to do is focus on comprehending his own laws. There's no need for him to comprehend a second law before he becomes a Grand Prime. As soon as Jinshin finished speaking, the wills of the 7 experts spoke out. Thank you for your kindness, Master. I feel like I should listen to the senior suggestions and focus on comprehending the laws I've comprehended right now, said Heiya. Fair enough. Jinshin sighed gently. Heiya's talent was indeed not particularly outstanding. This could be seen from the fact that he had yet to become a divine king after reaching the peak of the divine king's realm. He also knew that even if Heiya reached the primordial realm, he would only be a regular primordial realm expert. The divine king's top 10 would be able to put up a fight against him. As a matter of fact, even Shui Yunlan, who was still a divine king, would be able to defeat him. Then I'll inherit the remaining 7 laws, Jinshin said helplessly. Afterwards, he sent Qing Yishuan away from Kea into the Inata Tower before sending Heiya back to the Divine Hall. He formally accepted the legacies from the 7 experts. Under the control of the wills of the 7 experts, the dazzling golden cores of laws shot into Jinshin's forehead as streaks of golden light. At that moment, Jinshin shone brightly as the power of the 7 laws interwove around him. Vaguely, the sound of waves seemed to ring out. The wills of the 7 experts did not disperse. They continued to hover in the surroundings as they stared at Jinshin. Excitement and eagerness filled their faces. This child's soul is extremely strange. I hope we can really benefit from his soul. Moreover, he cultivates the chaotic body, which has reached quite a high level of attainment. His vital energy is extremely dense, enough to nurture a fragment of our soul. It's just a pity that Sword Master Yin Qi is too stubborn. He's unwilling to go with us, so he's truly gone. I feel like this child's soul can contain all the ways in the world. That's extremely rare. If we can obtain a portion of his soul and refine it, fusing it into our souls, it'll be a great fortune for us without a doubt. Everyone, let's meet again in the future. I'll be taking my leave first. Chapter 2342. Jinshin, who had already entered a state of comprehension, failed to hear the conversation between the 7 experts at all. At this moment, he was enveloped by a layer of dazzling, golden light. As the laws of the world wove together, he had already entered a state of selflessness, devoting himself to the comprehension of the laws. The power of the laws of creation, destruction, fire, strength, space, corrosion, and curses would appear from time to time on Jinshin, enveloping him heavily. Laws permeated his body as the sound of laws boomed out. To comprehend 7 different laws at the same time, this was an extremely difficult challenge for any cultivator. It could even be said to be impossible. This was because not only did it require extremely astonishing comprehension ability, but it also required an extraordinary affinity with the laws of the world. Only then would it be possible. However, this seemingly difficult task was not particularly difficult for Jinshin. Ignoring the fact that he had already resonated with the 3,000 laws, coupled with the unbelievable changes that had occurred after fusing with the strand of true chaotic force in his soul, he had become even closer to the laws of the world, allowing him to sense them even more clearly. As a result, Jinshin basically had no difficulty comprehending the 7 laws when all these advantages were combined. Moreover, he had already grasped the laws of destruction among the 7 laws, so he only needed to comprehend the remaining 6 laws. In just 7 days, Jinshin comprehended the first law and grasped the laws of creation. His comprehension of the laws of creation had reached the threshold of deity. As soon as he reached the threshold, Jinshin immediately gave up on comprehending the laws of creation. He began to comprehend the second law. Time passed in the blink of an eye. 3 months later, Jinshin finally roused from his seclusion. After 3 months of cultivation, he had comprehended all the remaining 6 laws apart from the laws of destruction. He had formally reached the threshold of deity, grasping all of them. Within his soul, 7 golden cores that contained the power of laws floated there quietly. The power of laws within them had not decreased by much. Clearly, Jinshin had used these golden cores of laws to gain insights into 6 new laws, and had not caused much damage to the 6 golden cores of essence spirit. The 8 seniors said that a single golden core of laws can allow a deity to reach the primordial realm in 1,000 years. However, I don't need 1,000 years to comprehend these laws to the primordial realm, Jinshin said. Jinshin opened his eyes. The light in his eyes flickered as he became extremely confident. Afterwards, he took out the fortune jade that was the size of a millstone from the Inata Tower. Fortune jade, how long it will take for me to comprehend all these laws to the divine king level will all depend on you. Looking at the fortune divine jade in front of him, Jinshin's expression was filled with unconcealable excitement. After that, he placed the fortune divine jade on the ground and sat down cross-legged on it, continuing to comprehend the laws of heaven and earth. For this step, he wanted to raise the cultivation of those who had reached the human god realm to the divine king realm. This was because only the power of laws at the level of divine king could awaken the final power hidden within the 8 experts. Immediately, a profound power of fortune appeared from beneath him. It possessed the presence of ways. Jinshin immediately felt like he had ingested the comprehension tea. His mind cleared up as many ideas flashed through his head. Immediately, he felt his ability to comprehend skyrocket. Comprehending the profound laws of the world became even easier. My laws of destruction have already reached late over God. I'm only a step away from breaking through to the level of Divine King, so I better comprehend the laws of destruction to the level of Divine King first, Jinshin thought. Afterwards, he began to connect with the golden core of the laws of destruction in his soul. He used the laws of destruction hidden within to cultivate. Strands of pure power of laws seeped out from the golden core of the laws of destruction strand by strand. Jinshin did not directly absorb the power of laws. Instead, he used it to comprehend the truths of the world in detail. Every time he comprehended a sliver of it, the sliver would fuse with his soul and be truly absorbed by him. As a result, his comprehension of the laws of destruction rapidly deepened. However, this time, Jinshin suddenly felt agitated after cultivating for a short while. He stopped cultivating subconsciously. When he opened his eyes, he frowned slightly. Jinshin sat on the fortune jade quietly as the resplendent power of fortune enveloped his entire body. He sank into his thoughts with his eyes wide open. He had already entered a state of selflessness when he cultivated. His heart was truly as calm as water, but he suddenly felt agitated without any prior signs. Moreover, the agitation completely vanished as soon as he finished cultivating. This made Jinshin feel that something was off. Jinshin pondered for a very long time as he sat on the fortune jade. The light in his eyes flickered as his face became uneasy. Afterwards, he used the senses of his soul to the limit and began to examine himself from top to bottom. The 7 golden cores of laws in his soul became the focus of his examination. In the end, he failed to discover any abnormalities at all. Jinshin fell silent. A strange light flickered in his eyes, and his gaze gradually deepened. A while later, he closed his eyes and continued to comprehend the laws of destruction. Afterwards, the agitation no longer appeared, allowing Jinshin to comprehend the laws of destruction surprisingly smoothly. A month later, the power of laws that belonged to the Divine King descended, enveloping Jinshin completely. His laws of destruction had finally reached the Divine King's level. Now, his laws of the sword and the laws of destruction had both reached the Divine King's level. His laws of the sword had reached the late Divine King's level, which corresponded to the great perfection of sword spirit. If he took another step further, he would reach the primordial realm, which corresponded to sword immortal. However, Jinshin also knew that this step would not be taken so easily. Even with his soul having changed, allowing him to comprehend the laws of the world with greater clarity, and with the assistance of the Fortune Jade, he would not be able to reach Sword Immortal in a short period of time. Towards the end, the comprehension and breakthrough of laws would become more and more difficult. He would need a long period of time to settle down. There really is a secret technique hidden within this golden core of the laws of destruction. It's just that the secret technique is of a high grade, so I'll need quite some time to comprehend it. I don't have enough time right now. Whatever. I'll comprehend the secret technique in the future. I should continue comprehending the laws for now, thought Jinshin. He did not stop at all. He continued to comprehend the second of the 7 laws, the laws of space. In Jinshin's opinion, he had already grasped the laws of the sword and the laws of destruction, which are the most offensive laws. He did not lack offensive laws for the time being. As a result, the laws of space were clearly more useful to him than the other laws. He had to start from the beginning to comprehend the laws of space, so he naturally could not comprehend them as quickly as he did the laws of destruction. However, even with that being the case, he only used half a year to comprehend the laws of space to the Divine King's level. Of course, this did not mean that Jinshin's talent was truly that impressive. Aside from the assistance of the Fortune Jade, the greatest reason why he could reach such a level was because of the golden cores of laws left behind by the 7 experts. Jinshin was only able to reach such a level through the golden cores of laws. He created miracles time and time again, going from a basic level of comprehension to the Divine King's level in a single stroke. Spatial Devouring Technique. World Reversal. Chapter 2343. By borrowing the power of space, one can break through the shackles of the world and traverse the river of time, traversing billions of kilometers in an instant. Jinshin's eyes lit up as he read the description of universe reversal. He discovered that universe reversal was not only a very powerful escape technique, but it was also a very good way to travel. Traversing billions of kilometers in an instant was basically the same as traversing an entire continent. Some continents were even less than billions of kilometers in diameter. Clearly, this secret technique was most suitable for traveling through the void of the universe. He would not even need to use teleportation formations across continents, saving him a large amount of precious 5-colored divine crystals. Universe reversal feels much more difficult than the void-devouring technique. It's extremely difficult to use universe reversal with the comprehension of the laws of space at the Divine King level. I wonder if I can use the laws of space at the Divine King level to get a glimpse of universe reversal's threshold. But there's no doubt that it'll take an extremely long time. Jinshin thought. The strength of the 8 experts was just too terrifying when they were alive. Their realms were far beyond his imagination. The supreme secret techniques they left behind would naturally be of a high level. The mysteries of the world involved in these secret techniques were just too profound for someone like him who was only at the Divine King level. As a result, it would not be as easy for him to get a glimpse of these secret techniques as it was for him to comprehend the radiant arts. There's about a year left before the selection of chosen saint. I'll try to comprehend a few more laws during this period of time. Jinshin thought before moving on to the next law. Time passed silently. In the blink of an eye, another half a year had passed. On this day, Jinshin roused from his state of selflessness. Another divine, king-level law revolved around him. In the past half a year, he had already comprehended the law of strength to the early divine king level. It really is as I expected. The laws of strength will indeed amplify my chaotic body. If I fuse the laws of strength into my chaotic body will become 30% tougher. It won't just increase the toughness of my body, but also the strength of my body. Jinshin secretly rejoiced when he sensed the changes the laws of strength brought to him. And this is only the early divine king's laws of strength. In the future, as my comprehension of the laws of strength rapidly deepens and my comprehension of the laws of strength rapidly increases, the amplification of my chaotic body from the laws of strength will become greater and greater as well. Jinshin's eyes lit up. The law of strength was of great help to him, as it directly increased his ultimate combat strength. At this moment, he was itching to use the golden pellet of law of strength to comprehend the law of strength to the peak of the divine king realm. He believed that once he comprehended the laws of strength to the late divine king, the amplification of his chaotic body would definitely exceed 30%. However, he did not have that much time right now. Out of the 7 laws, I've already comprehended the laws of destruction, space, and strength to the divine king realm. There are only the laws of creation, fire, corrosion, and curses left. Kea just happens to have grasped the laws of creation and fire, and she has reached the divine king realm as well, Jinshin thought. I won't be in a hurry to comprehend the laws of creation and fire for now. I'll comprehend the laws of corrosion and curses first. Jinshin decided to comprehend the laws of curses after a moment of thought. As Jinshin entered seclusion and paid no attention to the matters of the world, frantically increasing his strength, the desolate plain was not peaceful at all. After several years, the disturbance that Jinshin's name caused on the desolate plain did not decrease at all. Instead, it became even greater than before. More and more peak experts and organizations entered the desolate plain, searching for Jinshin everywhere on the desolate plain under the guise of helping the First Majesty. Not only did they turn the entire desolate plain upside down several times, but even the swamp where Jinshin had discovered the fortune jade was not spared. Even the headquarters of all the peak organizations on the desolate plain had been searched countless times. Even the sacred hall of the Radiant Saint Hall that stood above the clouds had been visited several times by these foreign experts. They had almost entered the Tower of Radiance, which infuriated the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall. He had almost started a direct battle with these foreign experts. An example like the Radiant Saint Hall also happened to the other peak organizations on the desolate plain. Many of their forbidden grounds had almost been invaded by outsiders. For a time, the reckless actions of these foreign experts caused the entire desolate state to be thrown into chaos. Many large and small forces began to complain. However, all the native organizations on the desolate plain were helpless about the current situation. They were filled with grievances, but they had nowhere to vent. This was because as the number of foreign experts rapidly increased, the number of clans and sects that participated rapidly increased. Gradually, the organization that they formed completely suppressed the native organizations on the desolate plain. Moreover, they were using the heavenly palace of Bishing's name, so the native organizations on the desolate plain were even more helpless. After failing to find Jinshin after so long, the foreign experts gradually became flustered. A rumor that Jinshin had already fled the desolate plain gradually spread. Only the Celestial Sword Saint's place of cultivation is left on the desolate plain now. The peak experts from outside the desolate plain often communicated with one another. At this moment, someone said that they began to doubt the Celestial Sword Saint. Do you think Jinshin is hiding where the Celestial Sword Saint cultivates? Are we going to disturb the the Celestial Sword Saint? The Celestial Sword Saint is not an existence to be trifled with. As soon as the Celestial Sword Saint was mentioned, the expressions of all the foreign experts changed slightly. They frowned deeply. The Celestial Sword Saint is indeed not someone to be trifled with, but we're also helping the First Majesty find her master's Anata Tower sooner. I refuse to believe that the Celestial Sword Saint is bold enough to offend the First Majesty. I think you all know just how terrifying the First Majesty's strength is, said the Celestial Sword Saint. All right, let's gather a few more people and pay a visit to the Celestial Sword Saint. Immediately, over a dozen peak experts quickly gathered from the foreign experts and set off for the Celestial Sword Saint's place of cultivation. The Celestial Sword Saint was an extremely supreme existence on the desolate plain. He was extremely powerful, having already reigned as the greatest expert on the desolate plain for many years. Across the entire desolate plain, no organization dared to stand up to the Celestial Sword Saint. The Sword God Mountains was an ancient mountain range on the desolate plain. There were many straight, sword-shaped mountains there, while the Celestial Sword Saint spent most of his time cultivating in seclusion. He did not pay any attention to the matters of the world. Today, over a dozen peak experts from outside the desolate plain had come together. They were extremely polite, using the excuse of paying a visit. They wanted to find Jinshin in the Sword God Mountains. Piss off. In the next moment, a deafening bellow rang out from the depths of the Sword God Mountains. The terrifying sound waves caused space to crack. The voice was so loud that it rang through the entire desolate plain. With the voice, an extremely powerful, terrifying sword intent radiated from the depths of the Sword God Mountains. At that moment, the entire region seemed to have become a domain of sword chi. The faces of the dozen or so top powerhouses changed in unison, and they were immediately shaken to the point where they staggered back. Celestial Sword Saint, we're only helping the First Majesty of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing. Why must you get in our way? A middle-aged man among the peak experts called out sternly. The person you're looking for isn't with me. If you say another word, I'll take your head, the Celestial Sword Saint replied in a domineering manner. Chapter 2344. These outsiders are really becoming more and more lawless. They're actually bold enough to go to the Celestial Sword Saint's Sword God Mountains. They're just too confident. They think that they could do whatever they want on the desolate plain and strike fear into everyone's hearts by bringing up the First Majesty of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing. However, they don't even know who the Celestial Sword Saint is. These outsiders can indeed crush us if they work together, but the Celestial Sword Saint has never taken them seriously. These outsiders sure are cautious. They paid a visit to the Sword God Mountains politely and didn't barge in forcefully. Otherwise, I think we would have seen over a dozen heads flying through the air. Sigh, what a pity. The Celestial Sword Saint didn't actually take action, as the Celestial Sword Saint demonstrated his might and forced the peak experts to retreat in dejection in an extremely domineering manner. The native experts and important figures of the various organizations on the desolate plain clashed with their souls and conversed with one another. They all felt extremely pleased. There was also a slight sense of pity among all of them. In the past few days, as peak organizations that ruled the desolate plain, they had already felt extremely frustrated and furious when the outsiders used the name of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing to search for them fearlessly. However, due to their own strength and their fear of the First Majesty of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing, they were powerless to do anything about it. Only now did the Celestial Sword Saint's domineering reply finally allow these peak organizations that once ruled the desolate plain to hold their heads up high. It's just a pity that the Celestial Sword Saint only cares about cultivation and doesn't pay attention to the matters of the world. He doesn't interfere with any of the conflicts on the desolate plain either. Otherwise, as long as he was willing to stand out, these outsiders wouldn't be so arrogant. What do you know? That's a true otherworldly expert. A few peak experts on the desolate plain were quite critical of the Celestial Sword Saint's decision to allow these outsiders to run amok on the desolate plain. However, after sensing the Celestial Sword Saint's strength, the outsiders became slightly more obedient. They no longer dared to set foot in the Sword God Mountains. However, their search for Jianshun did not slow down. 3 months later, when there were only 2 months left until the selection of the chosen saint, the outsiders gradually lost their patience. They had so many people, so many peak experts, and they had already turned the desolate plain upside down several times, but they still failed to find any traces of Jianshun. Gradually, more and more of them began to lose confidence. They began to believe that Jianshun had already fled the desolate plain. As a result, some clans were prepared to give up on the search in the barren state. Jianshun is still in the barren state. However, just as these people were preparing to leave the desolate state, a voice from beyond the heavens rang out mightily from the distant space. Outside the desolate plain, the pale-faced azure Peng King hovered in the air silently. His eyes were filled with killing intent, as intense killing intent revolved around him. Heavenly King of azure brilliance, how are you so sure that Jianshun is on the desolate plain? An outsider asked from the desolate plain. His voice was not loud, but it rang out extremely far, passing through the distant space and ringing out in the azure Peng King's ears. I once obtained a droplet of Jianshun's blood. With the droplet of blood, I used a secret technique to divine his whereabouts several times. Although the droplet of blood is gone now, I can still vaguely sense his whereabouts. As a result, I'm certain that Jianshun is still hiding on the desolate plain, said the azure Peng King. Heavenly King of azure brilliance, where is Jianshun on the desolate plain? The outsiders gathered on the desolate plain all became excited when they heard that. After searching for so long, they were finally close to finding Jianshun's hiding place. However, at the same time, many experts felt admiration for Jianshun. A puny divine king had actually managed to hide for so long under the search of so many peak experts. That was not something that just anyone could do. If I had obtained a droplet of Jianshun's blood back then, it would have been very easy for me to find him on the desolate plain. But now, I've lost the droplet of blood. My senses for him are from when I used the secret technique last time. Now, the senses are becoming more and more blurry and weak. In 3 years at most, the senses will vanish completely, said the azure Peng King in the air. He knew that once he completely lost his senses for Jianshun, it would truly be impossible for him to find any traces of Jianshun in the vast saint's world. As a result, he could only leak the news out helplessly. Jianshun, even if I can't obtain the Inata Tower, I won't let you live, thought the azure Peng King. The azure Peng King thought. He had always been a vengeful person. Once someone he held a grudge against, he would not miss any opportunity to kill them unless they were as powerful as the Celestial Sword Saint. He even held this grudge against the Celestial Sword Saint firmly in his heart. Once there was a day when he could surpass the Celestial Sword Saint in strength, or if he found an opportunity, he would move against the Celestial Sword Saint without any hesitation. And who was the black-robed man who was with Jianshun in the miniature world last time? Once I'm done here, I'll definitely find out your true identity, thought the azure Peng King. He also held a grudge against Mo Tianyun's original body when he was hunted down last time. The news leaked by the heavenly king of azure brilliance on the desolate plain dispelled all thoughts of retreating. The rumor that Jianshun had already left the desolate plain vanished as well. Immediately, the many experts on the desolate plain began to conduct a final search for Jianshun in an even more detailed manner. Jianshun has hidden himself very well. He has a treasure that conceals his identity and presence. Regular methods are no longer effective. However, no matter how he hides himself, it'll be very difficult for him to hide the level of his blood. We can't peer into Jianshun's past and future. If that's the case, let's peer into all the experts from the Divine King to the Infinite Prime on the desolate plain. We'll search them one by one. As long as we find someone we can't peer into, we'll immediately interrogate them. That's right. We'll search them one by one as a final search. If we still can't find Jianshun before the Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance's senses for him vanish, we'll give up on searching for him. If he's above the Divine King's level of cultivation, we'll personally take action and peer into him right before them. If he's below the Divine King's level of cultivation, We'll directly examine the level of his blood to prevent him from hiding his strength and mixing in with weaker cultivators. I refuse to believe we can't find him with that. Then let's make a final gamble. As for who can find Jianxun in the end and obtain the Inata Tower, it'll all depend on their luck and fortune. The peak experts all gritted their teeth. After all, the desolate plain was vast. There were many divine kings on the desolate plain. No matter how great their cultivation was, peering into every single divine king would take a tremendous toll on them. Chapter 2345. As all the peak experts searched for Jianxun, the person who had started all of this, remained in an underground cave. He cultivated without any distractions, completely entering a state of selflessness as he comprehended the laws of curses as best he could. Invisible laws of the world revolved around him, releasing the power of curses. They were filled with the mysteries of the ways, as if all the curses in the world were hidden within them. When he sat down, there was a piece of fortune divine jade that was the size of a millstone placed there. It gave off a dazzling and eye-catching light. Waves of dense fortune energy filled it, causing one's entire soul to involuntarily fall into an ethereal state, becoming more in tune with the world and closer to the great Tao. Cultivation was endless. After who knew how long, a formation engraved on the ground around the fortune jade suddenly shone brightly. A strange pulse radiated from the formation, causing Jianxun to gradually wake up from his cultivation. As soon as he stopped cultivating, the power of the curse around him disappeared in an instant, completely disappearing. The summoning formation was a simple formation Jianxun had cast down. It could wake him up from his cultivation at a set time, preventing him from over-cultivating and forgetting the time, which would cause him to miss out on the opportunity to enter the Tower of Radiance. Jianxun slowly opened his eyes as he sat on the fortune jade. He glanced at the summoning formation on the ground indifferently and murmured, "There's still 2 months. I can't continue comprehending the laws." His laws of curses did not break through to Divine King's realm like the laws of strength and the laws of space during the past few months. It remained at mid over God. There was just far too little time. In just 4 short months, it was impossible for him to break through from the threshold of deity to God King in a single stroke. Jianxun stood up from the fortune jade and entered the Inata Tower with the senses of his soul. Qing Yishuan sat on the 9th floor with her eyes closed as she comprehended the laws of the sword. Strands of sharp sword qi gathered around her as the power of the laws of the sword revolved around her. Jianxun did not enter the Inata Tower. Instead, he used the senses of his soul to probe Qing Yishuan's situation. He silently stared at Qing Yishuan, who had entered a state of selflessness. He could not help but think about how he had suddenly become agitated when he had just comprehended the laws. The light in his eyes immediately flickered. He was not an ordinary person. Instead, he was a powerful divine king who had grasped part of the truths of the world and comprehended several laws. He was also a powerful fighter who could kill infinite primes. He would never feel something like this for no reason. As a result, he was certain that something bad had happened. However, no matter how he searched and thought about it, he was unable to come up with anything. He could only bury this matter in his heart. Now that he saw Qing Yishuan inherit the golden core of laws from the human expert, Jianxun could not help but associate it with the agitation he had experienced in the past. For a moment, he had no idea whether it was a blessing or a curse for Qing Yishuan to inherit the legacies of the laws of the 8 experts. However, with another thought, he stopped worrying when he thought about how the righteous aura of the world lingered around the human expert for so long. He understood that even if the golden cores of laws passed down by the 8 great experts were deceitful and had other motives, at the very least, the human expert would never do such a thing. This was because it was completely inconsistent with his righteous bearing. With Qing Yishuan's current progress, she'll probably need over 200 years to reach the level of the Divine King. Jianxun stared at Qing Yishuan silently. After hesitating slightly, he tossed the fortune jade to Qing Yishuan and made her sit down. He could already control a portion of the Inata Tower's power, so he could be regarded as half a master of the Inata Tower. As a result, he could do this without disturbing Qing Yishuan. I hope she can comprehend the level of the Divine King as soon as possible. Jianshan was filled with anticipation for Qing Yishuan. Just when he was about to withdraw the senses of his soul from the Inata Tower, Kea suddenly appeared on the 9th floor. She seemed to know that the senses of Jianshan's soul were here, so she said to the empty space, "Jianshan, I want to stay in the cavern for a while." Jianshan already knew that the 9 floors of the Inata Tower were unable to stop Kea, so he did not find it strange at all when Kea suddenly appeared on the 9th floor. Afterwards, with a thought, Jianshan made Kea leave the Inata Tower. As soon as Kea appeared in the cavern, she stared at the chained bodies of the 8 experts before looking at the depths of the cavern from time to time. She sank into her thoughts in the direction where the greatest king of the ancient great apes, Gusta, was being nurtured. "Kea, have you discovered something?" Jianshan asked when he noticed Kea's abnormality. Kea shook her head. A sliver of confusion and bewilderment appeared in her eyes. She said nothing. Jianshan did not pursue the matter. He said to Kea, "Then be careful. I'll go retrieve the 3 strands of vital energy." Afterwards, Jianshan left Kea alone while he directly flew towards the ancient beasts in the distance. The 3 strands of vital energy were promised to him by 3 of the 8 experts. The 3 of them were originally colossal ancient beasts, so the method to collect the vital energy had already been imprinted in Jianshan's head when he inherited their legacies. Before long, Jianshan arrived before one of the ancient beasts. He stood before the huge head of the ancient beast and used the power of laws that the ancient beast had passed down to him to use a secret technique. Afterwards, he gently placed his hand on the head and drew out the vital energy hidden within the ancient beast. Before long, a fist-sized ball of pure vital energy appeared in Jinshan's hand. It pulsed with powerful energy. Jinshan's eyes shone brightly when he saw the ball of vital energy. Even though there was not a lot of vital energy, its purity had completely exceeded his imagination. The terrifying energy hidden within it shocked him even more. What terrifying pulses of energy! Just the energy within this ball of vital energy is enough to raise the chaotic body from the 12th layer to the 13th layer, and there might even be some left over. Jianshan was shocked. Back then, he had used up a tremendous amount of resources to raise the chaotic body from the 12th layer to the 13th layer. Yet now, just the ball of vital energy in his hand was more than enough. This ball of vital energy is extremely tremendous to me, but it's probably not even a 10,000th of what it used to be to this ancient beast, thought Jianshan. After drawing away the ball of vital energy, the tremendous vital energy within the ancient beast did not decrease at all, Jianshan thought. However, the remaining vital energy in his body had been locked up by the chains, so he could not draw it out at all. The reason why the ball of vital energy in his hand had not been sealed up by the chains was because the ancient beast had left it behind when it was alive. Afterwards, Jianshan visited 2 other ancient beasts and used different methods to obtain 2 more balls of vital energy. Every single ball of vital energy was extremely powerful. The tremendous amount of energy within them was enough for him to reach the 13th layer of the chaotic body from the 12th layer. It's a pity that my chaotic body has already reached the 13th layer. If I want to break through to the 14th layer, the energy I need is 10 times more than the energy needed to break through to the 13th layer. P.S. Xiaoyao's official account on WeChat has already released a ranking of the top 10 beauties. The ranking of the top 10 beauties has already been released. It's all characters from a book. If you want to take a look, please follow Xiaoyao's official account on WeChat, Xingxingxiao 110. Pinyin was the pen name of Xinxing Xiaoyao. There was also a phone number for the police. You could also search for Xinxing Xiaoyao's pen name in the official account on WeChat. After following him, you could reply to Xiaoyao's official account to see the ranking of the top 10 beauties in the past. Chapter 2346. Whatever. I'll absorb the 3 vital energies first. Jianshan sat down and carefully inspected the 3 vital energies in his hand. After confirming that there were no problems, he immediately began to absorb the tremendous energy within them. Although the 3 strands of vital energy were nowhere near enough for his chaotic body to break through to the next layer, it could strengthen the chaotic Niden in his dantian slightly, increasing the amount of chaotic force within it. As a result, the energy he needed to break through would decrease slightly. Jinshin's chaotic body had reached the major achievement, so both the speed at which he absorbed and refined energy was extremely fast. One of the vital energies in his hand decreased at a visible rate. Not only did the 3 vital energies contain tremendous energy, but they also contained a small portion of vital energies and some essence of flesh and blood. As a result, Jianshan benefited greatly from absorbing the 3 vital energies. Not only did he feel his chaotic Niden rapidly strengthen, but even his vital energies increased as well. In particular, when the essence of flesh and blood fused with his chaotic body, he immediately felt comfortable. All the pores on his body could not help but open up. Every single cell and particle in his body was like a hungry tiger, greedily devouring the limited amount of essence of flesh and blood. The essence of flesh and blood came from 3 extremely powerful beasts, after all. It was of extremely high quality, so it was indeed a great supplement to Jinshin's chaotic body. As he absorbed the essence of flesh and blood, Jinshan could clearly sense that his chaotic body was rapidly strengthening. It was undergoing a metamorphosis at its very core, experiencing a huge leap in strength. After an entire month and a half, Jinshin finally absorbed all 3 strands of vital energy. Even though his chaotic body was still at the 13th layer, his body had become slightly more powerful than before due to the essence of flesh and blood that had fused with his body. My chaotic body is probably no weaker than the 14th layer now. Jinshin secretly rejoiced when he sensed the explosive power within his body. His chaotic body had been refined by a strand of true chaotic force when he fused the twin swords. Coupled with the essence of flesh and blood he had just absorbed, his chaotic body had far exceeded the toughness of the 13th layer. If I include the amplification of my body from the laws of strength, my chaotic body will grow even stronger. I wonder what heavenly layer of infinite prime my current battle prowess is equivalent to, thought Jianshan. However, he was certain that his current battle prowess was much greater than when he killed the infinite prime on planet Tianming. At this moment, Jianshan flipped his hand, and a beautiful flower appeared in his palm. The flower seemed to possess a mind of its own. As soon as it appeared, it swayed towards Jianshan as if it was trying to get on his good side. It seemed to be very close to him. This was the immortal devouring orchid. Jianshan had obtained it from the Poseidon Palace. He had learned from the sword spirits that the immortal devouring orchid was rather renowned in the immortals' world. It specialized in devouring the corpses of immortals, so its growth rate was extremely shocking. However, the immortal devouring orchid was just too weak right now, and Jinshin's opponents were either the Divine King or the Primordial Realm. As a result, the immortal devouring orchid was unable to devour the corpses of these experts, so its growth rate was rather slow. However, even with that being the case, it had reached the origin realm after consuming a few droplets of Jinshin's chaotic blood. I'll give you a droplet of essence blood. I hope you can reach godhood as soon as possible. Once you reach godhood, you should be able to absorb the Divine King's blood slowly. The 2 Divine King's corpses in the Divine Hall have been kept for you. Once you become powerful enough, there'll be an infinite Prime's corpse for you to enjoy as well. Jianshan dripped a droplet of essence blood that contained his vital energies into the immortal devouring orchid. As the sword spirits had quite a high evaluation of the immortal devouring orchid, he was filled with anticipation for its future. He did not hold back when nurturing it. The immortal devouring orchid seemed to understand Jinshin's words. After fusing with the droplet of essence blood, it curled up happily and began to absorb the essence blood's power. Although Jinshin's blood was much more powerful than the Divine King's, the immortal devouring orchid did not harm the immortal devouring orchid because it had already accepted Jianshan as its master. Coupled with Jianshan's purposeful actions, it could absorb it successfully. Jianshan stowed the immortal devouring orchid away and found Kea in the underground cavern. Kea currently sat on the ground as he stared at the depths of the cavern in a daze. Jianshan, are you about to leave? Kea looked over and asked Jianshan. Jianshan nodded. The competition to become the chosen saint of the Radiant Saint Hall is about to begin. I need to leave. Kea stared at the depths of the cavern and said gently, the vital energy there hides a very terrifying power. If you can obtain it, it'll be extremely beneficial to you. Jianshan immediately looked at the pool of blood that nourished Gusta's body. He sighed gently. Indeed, but it'll be very difficult to approach that place. Jianshan paused when he reached there. A thought flashed through his head, and he said, let's try using the Inata Tower. Kea, for safety's sake, you should enter the tower with me. Kea nodded and did not object. Afterwards, Jianshan and Kea entered the Inata Tower. They carefully moved towards the pool of blood that Gusta resided in. When they arrived 100 kilometers away from the pool of blood, the pool began to churn violently once again. It was like a serpent was wreaking havoc in there, erupting with powerful vital energy. Immediately, the space there shook as chains danced in the air. It seemed like a terrifying storm was brewing. It was extremely powerful and terrifying. The vital energy was just too powerful. The closer they got, the more powerful the impact became. It truly possessed devastating power. Even primordial realm experts would not dare to venture too far in. However, no matter how vicious it was unable to stop the Inata Tower. Under Jianshan's control, the Inata Tower endured the incoming vital energy. It staggered through the storm, constantly venturing deeper and deeper. As the Inata Tower drew closer and closer to the pool of blood, Jianshan's eyes gradually lit up. However, in the end, when the Inata Tower was only 3 kilometers away from the pool of blood, a powerful barrier suddenly rose up from the edge of the pool. The Inata Tower under Jianshan's control was unable to break through the barrier no matter what. It was blocked outside. It doesn't work. I can't approach it at all. Jianshan sighed gently from within the Inata Tower. He was filled with pity. He could sense that the barrier had been cast down by an extremely terrifying expert. It was probably the handiwork of the other 2 kings of the ancient great apes. Jianshan, I want to stay here for a while longer, Kea said from beside Jianshan. Jianshan glanced at Kea strangely when he heard that. However, he nodded in agreement and did not say anything more. After all, this was Kea's freedom. He had no reason to turn him down. Moreover, the cavern was extremely well hidden, so it was extremely safe for Kea to stay here. Chapter 23:47. Somewhere on the desolate plain, there was a swamp shrouded in poisonous gas. It was extremely desolate. Very few people would set foot here. Only a few venomous beasts would prowl the area all year round, hunting for food. At this moment, the calm swamp suddenly began to churn in an extremely abnormal manner. It was as if something was rapidly emerging from the bottom of the swamp. The disturbance there attracted the attention of the venomous beasts nearby. They quickly gathered over and stared at the area with their cold eyes. Very soon, the churning swamp suddenly split open. A white-robed figure bathed in a layer of light silently emerged from the swamp. To no surprise, the figure was Jianshan. Jianshan was enveloped by a layer of pure white light. He emerged from the swamp without being stained by the mud. The moment they saw Jianshan, the venomous beasts in the surroundings that were clearly not very intelligent immediately roared out and charged towards Jianshan. Jianshan did not even glance at the venomous beasts. With a wave of his hand, a few radiant swords shot out, reducing the venomous beasts to pieces. Afterwards, he identified his location and immediately rose into the air with Radiant Saint light, directly hurrying towards the Radiant Saint Hall. Jianshan only displayed the speed of a one-colored soul core, so he did not move quickly. When he left the swamp and was about to approach a city, he was suddenly stopped by a cultivator who seemed to be in his 30s. This martial artist was in the heavenly god realm. He was extremely fat, but his face had a simple and honest look. At first glance, he looked a little silly. "Stop. Please show me your blood medallion," the plump, honest-looking young man said to Jianchen gently. Jianchen frowned when he heard that. He had remained underground for over 2 years, so he naturally had no idea what had happened in the outside world during that time. He had no idea what the so-called blood medallion was. Before Jianchen could reply, another middle-aged man flew over from afar. The middle-aged man wore the same clothes as the plump young man, so it was obvious that they came from the same organization. As soon as the middle-aged man arrived beside the plump young man, he smacked his head in annoyance and said, "You idiot. Even if you can't recognize the robes of the Radiant Saint Hall, you should be able to recognize Radiant Saint Force. The blood medallion of a disciple of the Radiant Saint Hall will naturally be checked by people of higher status. Why are you interfering?" Afterwards, the middle-aged man did not care that Jianchen only had a one-colored soul core at all. He clasped his fist towards Jianchen in a friendly manner and said, "Brother, my junior brother is a little slow-witted. If he has offended you before, please don't take offense." Jianchen smiled faintly and exchanged some pleasantries with the middle-aged man. Afterwards, he asked, "Senior, may I ask what this blood medallion is?" The middle-aged man's impression of Jianchen immediately improved when he saw how the disciple of the Radiant Saint Hall was so friendly and did not act like a disciple of a peak sect. However, Jianchen's question did surprise the middle-aged man. "You actually don't know about the blood medallion?" The middle-aged man stared at Jianchen strangely. "I spent 2 years in seclusion in the wilderness, ignoring the matters of the world. I have no idea what happened in the outside world during that time," said Jianchen. "I see." The middle-aged man came to a realization before explaining to Jianchen extremely patiently. The blood medallion actually only appeared recently. It was created by the peak experts on the desolate plain together with many peak organizations. They order all the cultivators on the desolate plain, regardless of their cultivation, and even mortals who have never cultivated before, to use a wondrous treasure to test their blood. Afterwards, they will give a blood medallion to everyone who passes the test. Only with a blood medallion can they move about the desolate plain normally. "What if they don't have a blood medallion?" Jianchen asked with a frown. "Then they'll obviously be captured and forced to test their blood," said the middle-aged man. Afterwards, he smiled embarrassedly and said to Jianchen, "Of course, you're a disciple of a peak sect. Disciples of smaller sects like us don't dare to offend you at all. However, there are a few enforcers from other peak sects who specialize in handling matters like this. Look, this is a blood medallion. It's forged from special materials. Every single blood medallion possesses the imprint of our lives, so it can't be faked." The middle-aged man was extremely polite to Jianchen. He told him everything he knew and even took the initiative to show him his blood medallion. Jianchen studied the blood medallion in the middle-aged man's hand and said nothing more. After thanking the middle-aged man, he directly left. "Protector Zhou, he's only a disciple with a low cultivation. Why are you so polite to him?" The honest-looking young man asked in confusion after Jianchen left. The middle-aged man called Protector Zhou smacked the young man's forehead again and said unhappily, "Idiot, he's not a regular disciple. His attire is something exclusive to intersect disciples. Only star-ranked geniuses can enjoy such treatment in the Radiant Saint Hall. Every single genius like that possesses extremely great statuses. They're not people our small quantity mountain can afford to offend. Do you understand?" However, Jianchen's face immediately sank after he left. It was impossible for him to not understand that the so-called blood medallion was something the peak experts had specially created to find him. However, it had to be mentioned that the introduction of the blood medallion really did give Jianchen a headache. Even though he could hide the pulses of energy in his blood, such that the Divine King would not be able to see through it, he was unable to hide the level of his blood no matter what. This was because even if the blood of the Divine King did not possess any energy, it was still very different from the blood of other low-level cultivators. Let alone treasures, some people with greater cultivations could even see through it with a single glance. It was possible to say that once his blood was tested, his disguise as a Radiant Saint Master would immediately be exposed. I need to enter the Tower of Radiance as soon as possible. As long as I enter the Tower of Radiance and obtain what I want, it won't matter even if my identity is exposed, Jinshin thought. He felt more and more pressured. She really did not have a lot of time left. Afterwards, Jinshin increased his speed and used the teleportation formations in the nearby cities. After a few short teleportations, he finally returned to the Radiant Saint Hall successfully. During this time, he often saw many people checking the blood medallions of the cultivators in the various cities. His identity as a disciple of the Radiant Saint Hall saved Jinshin quite a lot of trouble. As a result, the people who checked the blood medallions did not dare to stop Jinshin. The current Radiant Saint Hall had undergone some slight changes compared to when Jinshin left. The most obvious change was that a large square had been set up in the External Affairs Hall. The words Bloodline Test stood beside it. Currently, many Radiant Saint Masters had gathered on the square. They were taking their blood tests one after another. Among them, many Radiant Saint Masters had already taken out finger-sized blood medallions. They studied them curiously. However, compared to the outside world, the blood tests of the Radiant Saint Hall were clearly much more relaxed. They were not as strict. Chapter 2348. When Jinshin returned to the soaring clouds peak, the entire place was silent. With his sharp senses, he discovered that neither Zhuofeng nor Han Xian were on the soaring clouds peak. He glanced into the distance and discovered that there were quite a few Radiant Saint Masters of various strengths flying in the direction of the sky-gazing peak with lightning speed from the other mountains. Jinshin immediately went up to stop a Radiant Saint Master with a one-colored soul core and asked about the situation. The Radiant Saint Master stopped by Jinshin was a young woman. After hearing Jinshin's words, she immediately looked at Jinshin with an extremely strange gaze. She said, don't you know? The Lord of the Soaring Clouds Peak and the Lord of the Snowfall Peak are fighting on the sky-gazing peak right now. I heard they're fighting over a spot as one of the 9 retainers. A gleam of light flashed through Jinshin's eyes when he heard that. After clasping his fist at the young woman, he did not stop at all. A pair of radiant wings appeared on his back, and he hurried toward the sky-gazing peak as quickly as he could. Jinshin pushed his speed to the limit along the way. With his one-colored soul core, he actually constantly surpassed Radiant Saint Masters with 3-colored soul cores, causing many Radiant Saint Masters to raise their eyebrows. Who is this person? From his cultivation, he seems to only have a one-colored soul core. How is he so shockingly fast? He can actually use the radiant wings to such an extent. Does he really only have a one-colored soul core? The person who just surpassed us seems to be Chongyang of the Soaring Clouds Peak. What? He's Chongyang? The person who's rumored to have mastered Radiant Saint Force? Cries constantly rang out in the surroundings, but Jinshin ignored them all. He only hurried along as quickly as he could, flying past mountain after mountain before finally arriving at the sky-gazing peak. At this moment, the huge square on the sky-gazing peak was filled with people. Many Radiant Saint Masters of various strengths had gathered there. A huge ring hovered in the center of the square. Jinshin saw Han Xian in the ring with a single glance as he fought an intense battle with a skinny, middle-aged man. The suspended arena was a supreme quality saint artifact. There was a powerful energy barrier around the arena that could easily withstand the battle of a late divine king. At this moment, the battle between Han Xian and the Lord of the Snowfall Peak had reached its climax. The laws of the Hallowed crisscrossed around the two of them, colliding time and time again, erupting with powerful ripples of energy. The ripples of energy were all blocked by the energy barrier around the ring, so their battle was unable to harm the spectating Radiant Saint Masters at all. The two of them clashed extremely quickly. A few of the weaker Radiant Saint Masters were dazzled by the sight. They were unable to keep up with the speed of the battle at all. Jinshin frowned as he watched the battle. With his level of cultivation, he could naturally see the battle in the ring clearly. He could tell with a single glance that Han Xian was quite a lot weaker than the Lord of the Snowfall Peak. He clearly showed signs of defeat now. Defeat was only a matter of time. The Lord of the Snowfall Peak should have reached the peak of early seven-colored soul core, thought Jianshun. The Lord of the Snowfall Peak was equivalent to the peak of early Divine King, only a step away from mid-Divine King. On the other hand, Han Xin had only become a Divine King recently. As expected before long, the Lord of the Snowfall Peak struck Han Xin in the chest with a palm strike imbued with the laws of the Hallowed. He was knocked away, slamming heavily against the energy barrier around the ring. He was unable to climb back to his feet. The Lord of the Snowfall Peak, Zhou Yuan, is victorious. The Lord of the Sky, Gazing Peak's voice rang out in a timely manner, announcing the end of the battle. After that, the energy shield of the suspended arena opened, and the thin and small Snowfall Peak Master, who was dressed in white, walked down the arena with a red face amidst the enthusiastic cheers of the thousands of disciples. Han Xin, on the other hand, was lying on the suspended platform, covered in blood. He was severely injured. Teacher, Zhuo Feng and Bai Yu, who had been waiting below the ring for quite some time, immediately flew up. They looked at the heavily injured Han Xin with sorrow. Jianshun arrived on the ring as soon as possible as well. He said nothing and directly used a Radiant Saint technique to heal Han Xion's wounds. Both Bai Yu and Zhuo Feng were slightly surprised when they saw Jianshun suddenly appear. Even the gloomy eyes of the heavily injured Han Xin lit up slightly. However, they were clearly in no mood to catch up right now. Han Xin, you think you can compete with me for a spot? Why don't you take a look at yourself first? You overestimate yourself. At this moment, the Lord of the Snowfall Peak, who had already left the ring, suddenly looked back and sneered. Han Xin, you should feel fortunate that this is the Radiant Saint Hall. If we were outside, I might not be able to kill you due to the rules of the Sacred Hall, but I would definitely take away half of your life. The Lord of the Snowfall Peak's voice was filled with arrogance. He did not seem to take Han Xin seriously at all. Afterwards, the Lord of the Snowfall Peak looked at Jianshun, and his gaze became extremely cold. Although this was the first time he had seen Jianshun, how could he not treat the person who had injured his second disciple, Wen Cheng? However, Jianshun only had a one-colored soul core, so he was no different from an ant in his eyes. With his status, there was naturally no need for him to speak to Jianshun. Just when the Lord of the Snowfall Peak wanted to look away, Jianshun just happened to look over and meet his eyes. However, it was this glance that made the heart of the Peak Master of the Snowfall Peak jump violently. He seemed to have an ominous feeling in his heart. But soon afterwards, the Lord of the Snowfall Peak laughed self-deprecatingly. He thought, what's wrong with me? Have I been frightened by a mere disciple with a one-colored soul core? The Lord of the Snowfall Peak did not care too much. He left under the admiring gazes of his disciples. On the Soaring Clouds Peak, Han Xin had already been escorted back by Jianshun, Bai Yu, and Zhuo Feng. At this moment, Han Xin sat in his tiny wooden hut on the top of the Soaring Clouds Peak as he healed with Radiant Saint Force. Junior sister, what's going on? Why has teacher become involved with the Lord of the Snowfall Peak? Jianshun asked Bai Yu softly from outside the hut. Bai Yu looked at the wooden hut before her and said with a heavy heart, it's all for the 9 retainers of the 5 candidates. Among the 5 candidates, Donglin Yin Shui still lacks a final retainer. The battle between teacher and the Lord of the Snowfall Peak is actually for the final retainer of Donglin Yin Shui. Jianshun frowned when he heard that. He suddenly sensed that something was wrong. He said, strange. Aren't the 9 retainers only chosen by the Chosen Saint? I heard that there are some changes to the Chosen Saint's battle this time around. It seems that the 5 Chosen Saints all have the right to choose their 9 retainers. This seems to be related to the first round of the Chosen Saints battle, said Bai Yu. In other words, the 9 retainers of Donglin Yin Shui have all been decided? Jianshun asked. That's right. I heard from my master that among the 9 retainers of Donglin Yin Shui, there's only one. Aside from the Lord of the Snowfall Peak, the other 8 retainers all possess mid-7-colored soul cores, said Bai Yu. The master she spoke of was naturally the elder who had taken her away from the Soaring Clouds Peak. Chapter 2349. In the past, he had given Donglin Yin Shui a pure soul, allowing her cultivation to increase drastically over the past 2 years and assist her in becoming the chosen saint. Wasn't he just trying to obtain a position as one of the 9 retainers so that he could enter the Tower of Radiance? In the end, now that the competition between the chosen saints was close, he learned from Baiyu that Donglin Yin Shui's position as one of the 9 retainers had already been confirmed. Jianchen was extremely furious that Donglin Yin Shui had broken her promise. He could not hide his identity on the desolate plain for much longer. Once the eyes of the people who tested his blood landed on him, he would fly into a rage. Although the blood tests were not as strict in the Radiant Saint Hall right now as compared to the outside world, he knew that as time went on, all the disciples in the Radiant Saint Hall would be tested like the cultivators outside. As a result, he really did not have much time left. Once he failed to enter the Tower of Radiance through his identity as one of the 9 retainers of Donglin Yin Shui, he might lose the opportunity to enter the Tower of Radiance forever. Among the 5 candidates, Donglin Yin Shui has been progressing extremely quickly. I heard from my teacher that Donglin Yin Shui only had an early 4-colored soul core 2 or 3 years ago, but she's already reached the peak of the 4-colored soul core now. She's only a step away from reaching the 5-colored soul core. She's only a step away from reaching the peak of the 4-colored soul core. Although the other 4 candidates have been progressing very quickly in the past 2 years, none of them have reached the peak of the 4-colored soul core. As a result, Donglin Yin Shui has already gone from being the weakest to being the strongest among the 5 candidates. My master also said that Donglin Yin Shui's usage and control of Radiant Saint Force has improved by leaps and bounds in the past 2 years. She has become even more proficient. Out of the 5 candidates, she has at least a 70% chance of becoming the chosen saint. Baiyu looked at Jianshen and seemed to be implying something. She knew that Donglin Yin Shui had stayed in Jianshen's dwelling for half a month. Jianshen listened to Donglin Yin Shui's changes in the past 2 years emotionlessly. In the end, he finally could not hold himself back anymore. After ordering Baiyu to take care of Han Xian, he immediately left the soaring clouds peak. He condensed a pair of Radiant Saint Force and shot off towards the Myriad Flowers peak with lightning speed. There were less than 7 days until the day of the chosen Saint chosen. As a result, Jianshen's Saint Radiant Saint Force. Jianshen could hear many Radiant Saint Masters' discussions. It was no secret that Donglin Yin Shui's cultivation had improved by leaps and bounds in the past 2 years. It had already spread like wildfire, so Jianshen heard quite a few discussions about Donglin Yin Shui as well. There were many different versions of the discussions. However, a small portion of people believe that Donglin Yin Shui's improvement in the past 2 years was related to Changyang of the Soaring Clouds Peak. But Changyang only has a 1-colored soul core. It said that he's only a 1-star genius. How can he help Donglin Yin Shui, a 9-star genius who already has a 4-colored soul core? Naturally, there were even more people who scoffed at these discussions. The discussions either came from the whispering Radiant Saint Masters in the air or from the nearby mountains. Jianshen heard all of it with his great senses. Jianshen remained silent along the way. With the speed of his 1-colored soul core, he finally arrived at the Myriad Flowers Peak after several hours. The moment he set foot on the Myriad Flowers Peak, Jianshen's powerful senses expanded, enveloping the entire peak. The Lord of the Myriad Flowers Peak was equivalent to a mid-divine king, so Jianshen did not dare to use the senses of his soul here, just in case the Lord of the Myriad Flowers Peak sensed it and led to unnecessary trouble. However, he did not need to worry about being sensed by the Lord of the Myriad Flowers Peak. But very soon, Jianshen's face sank. Donglin Yin Shui was no longer on the Myriad Flowers Peak. Isn't that Changyang of the Soaring Clouds Peak? It really is him. I heard that Senior Yin Shui traveled great distances to the Soaring Clouds Peak to find him, and she even stayed in Changyang's dwelling for half a month. So he's Changyang. He doesn't look like much. His cultivation is nothing special, and it's said that he has no background either. I really don't understand why Senior Yin Shui would take a liking to someone like him. Don't talk nonsense. How could Senior Yin Shui take a liking to him? Last time, Senior Yin Shui went to find Changyang, and it was said that it was completely for an exchange of cultivation. Most of the disciples on the Myriad Flowers Peak were female, but there were quite a few male disciples among them. Immediately, many of them discovered Jinshin's arrival. They all looked over curiously as they discussed softly in the distance. Jinshin did not stick around. He turned around and left the Myriad Flowers Peak, returning to the Soaring Clouds Peak. Since Donglin Yin Shui was not on the Myriad Flowers Peak, she must be in the Sacred Hall. It was impossible for Jinshin to set foot in that place right now. Several hours later, Jinshin returned to the Soaring Clouds Peak. He did not go to the top of the Soaring Clouds Peak. Instead, he sat on a rock outside his dwelling quietly as he stared at the misty mountains in the distance in a daze. Do I really have to expose the fact that I've comprehended the laws of the hallowed? At this moment, Jinshin struggled inside. Donglin Yin Shui's broken promise had placed him in a dilemma. He had no idea what to do. Should he give up on the chance to enter the Tower of Radiance and flee far away from the desolate plain, or should he directly expose the fact that he had comprehended the laws of the hallowed with a one-colored soul core and become the only genius of the Radiant Saint Hall in 1,000,000 years and immediately become the chosen saint? However, he would be reluctant to leave just like that. However, if he directly exposed his talent, he would immediately become a dazzling figure that everyone paid attention to. That would instead increase the risk of his identity being exposed. After all, once he became the chosen saint, the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall would definitely investigate his past carefully. He might even be able to peer into his past and future. Just as Jinshin was stuck between a rock and a hard place, a person enveloped in light entered the Soaring Clouds Peak, obscuring their appearance. However, Jinshin's eyes suddenly narrowed when the figure arrived. A sliver of surprise appeared on his face. Even though the person was covered by light, obscuring her appearance, Jinshin could tell with a single glance that she was Donglin Yin Shui. "I'm entering your dwelling," Donglin Yin Shui said to Jinshin secretly while covering her tracks. She directly flew into Jinshin's dwelling. A gleam of light flashed through Jinshin's eyes. He returned to his simple dwelling silently and immediately cast down a formation at the entrance. Donglin Yin Shui frowned slightly when she saw Jinshin cast down an earth-level formation. With a wave of her hand, she took the initiative to throw out a formation disc and cast down an even higher-level formation. Afterwards, she withdrew the light and revealed her original appearance. "I'll be watched wherever I go now. I have no choice but to do this," Donglin Yin Shui said to Jinshin helplessly. Jinshin was emotionless. He stared at Donglin Yin Shui's beauty and said coldly, "You didn't keep your promise." Donglin Yin Shui apologetically said, "I know, but this matter has already exceeded my control. I can no longer decide on the 9 retainers. I really do feel extremely sorry." Donglin Yin Shui was filled with guilt. Jinshin frowned when he heard that. Donglin Yin Shui sighed gently. The 9 retainers are either very close to the esteemed elders of the Radiant Saint Hall, or they possess a certain background. In reality, it's not just me. Even the 9 retainers of the other 4 candidates were not chosen by themselves. They were not directly appointed by the elders. Instead, they were pushed on by the clans behind them. The Tower of Radiance of the Radiant Saint Hall only opens once very rarely, and the Tower of Radiance hides incredible fortuitous encounters. It's a place that all hallowed Saint Masters look forward to. As a result, every single one of the 9 retainers of the 5 candidates is in great demand right now. We so-called candidates have no way of arranging them at all. Then what's the conflict between my teacher and the Snowfall Peak about? Jinshin asked. The Han family that the Lord of the Soaring Clouds Peak, Han Xian, comes from is a renowned clan. Even though his branch does not possess a great status in the Han family, Han Xian seniors have given some people of our Donglin clan quite a lot of benefits, which is why they have the right to compete for the 9 retainers. As for the Peak Lord of the Snowfall Peak, Zhou Yuan, the organization behind him has always been hostile to the Han family. When the Han family gave him gifts, The organization behind the Peak Lord of the Snowfall Peak also gave some people of our Donglin clan some benefits. They got people of our Donglin clan to negotiate with the elders and arrange a battle between Zhou Yuan and Han Xian so that they could compete for the final spot, said Donglin Yanxue. Jinshin's face became extremely sunken when he heard Donglin Yanshue's explanation. He had never thought that the 9 retainers would all be arranged by the elders of the Sacred Hall and a few large organizations behind the scenes. Even more laughable was that he'd gone to great lengths to nurture Donglin Yanxue, only to end up benefiting someone else. Actually, it's not like there's no way at all. If one of my 9 retainers is missing, I can arrange for one myself. Donglin Yanxue looked at Jinshin deeply. Didn't you say that you couldn't make the decision? Jinshin frowned. There are only 6 days left until the competition between the Chosen Saint and the Chosen Saint. If there's not enough time to choose a new candidate, I can choose someone to make up the numbers. Of course, I can't guarantee that it'll succeed, but it's the last resort, said Donglin Yanxue. Then it's the same as not saying anything. I won't see you out. Jinshin snorted coldly and directly asked her to leave. Donglin Yanxue sighed gently. She glanced at Jinshin guiltily before turning around and leaving. Chapter 2350. I have to enter the Tower of Radiance no matter what. Jinshin secretly made up his mind. The Snowfall Peak was not far away from the Soaring Clouds Peak. There were only 3 mountains between them. On this day, 3 middle-aged men in the attire of Radiant Saint Masters arrived outside the Snowfall Peak. They smiled as they hovered there. One of them said, "Zhou Yuan, your old friends have come to visit. I wonder if it's convenient for you." The 3 middle-aged men were the lords of a peak in the Radiant Saint Hall. They all possessed 7-colored soul cores. In the past, there was no need for them to report when they came to visit the Lord of the Snowfall Peak. They could directly climb the mountain. But now, the Lord of the Snowfall Peak, Zhou Yuan, had become one of the 9 retainers of Donglin Yanxue. It was extremely likely for him to enter the Tower of Radiance in the future, so his status was completely different from before. As a result, the 3 of them could not act as casually as before when they came to visit this time. The 3 peak lords waited for a while, but they did not receive a reply from the Lord of the Snowfall Peak, Zhou Yuan. Instead, the first disciple of the Snowfall Peak, Zhao Mu, took the initiative to receive them. Zhao Mu seemed to be a young man in his 30s. He was composed and possessed some talent. He had only cultivated for around 2,000 years, yet he already possessed a 4-colored soul core. He had comprehended the laws of the Hallowed when he had a 3-colored soul core, so he was the disciple that the Lord of the Snowfall Peak was most proud of. Greetings to the 3 peak lords. You come at a bad time. Teacher isn't on the Snowfall Peak right now. Zhao Mu clasped his fist politely. What? Zhou Yuan isn't on the Snowfall Peak? Then where has he gone? The 3 peak lords were surprised. Zhao Mu hesitated when he heard that. He said, "In a few days, it will be the competition between the Chosen Saints. Teacher is currently preparing for the competition, so he has already left the Radiant Saint Hall to buy some saint artifacts that can increase his strength. If that's the case, we won't disturb you any longer. Let's go." The 3 peak lords were disappointed when they heard that. They did not climb the Snowfall Peak anymore, turning around and leaving. After the 3 of them left, a figure quietly walked out of the dense clouds in the distance. This person looked to be in his 20s, but his appearance was ordinary and there was nothing outstanding about him. He was Jinshin, who had disguised himself as Changyang. The Lord of the Snowfall Peak has actually left the Radiant Saint Hall. Jinshin stared at the Snowfall Peak from very far away. He did not use the senses of his soul. Instead, he used his great senses to hear every single word that Zhao Mu and the 3 peak lords said. That's good. A fierce look flashed in Jinshin's eyes. In the next moment, his figure once again hid in the clouds and disappeared. It was as if he had never appeared, and no one could find a trace of him. Afterwards, Jinshin concealed his presence and did not register himself in the External Affairs Hall. He avoided everyone and left the Radiant Saint Hall without anyone knowing. With his current level of cultivation, if he really did not want to be discovered, even if there was a divine king in the Foreign Affairs Hall, no one would be able to detect his whereabouts. Thus, no one knew of his departure this time. After leaving the Radiant Saint Hall, Jianshun continued to conceal himself. He continued on his way, and when he was several 100,000 kilometers away from the Radiant Saint Hall, he vanished into a forest with a flash. A moment later, when he reappeared, he was already dressed in black, and his appearance had undergone an earth-shattering change. He disguised himself as an abnormally tall and sturdy burly man who was over 2 meters tall, with a ferocious look on his face. No one would be able to connect him to the slender, radiant Saint Master from before when they saw his figure. Although the Lord of the Snowfall Peak has left, no one knows where he has gone with how large the desolate plain is. As a result, I can only wait for him on the path he must take to return to the Radiant Saint Hall. Jianshun looked into the distance. His gaze was extremely sharp as it radiated with soul-stirring, killing intent. This time, I can't let the Lord of the Snowfall Peak leave the Radiant Saint Hall alive, Jianshun thought. Afterwards, he pushed off with his feet. As the laws of strength revolved around him, he shot off like an arrow as a black streak of light. He shot off into the distance with lightning speed, disappearing into the horizon in a single instance. In the end, Jianshun stopped when he was sufficiently far away from the Radiant Saint Hall. After that, he found a secluded place. He carefully concealed his aura and quietly waited for the rabbit to appear. This was a place he had to take to return to the Radiant Saint Hall. No matter where the Lord of the Snowfall Peak went, he would definitely pass by this place as soon as he returned. Jianshun waited for 3 days. 3 days later, in a bustling city closest to the Radiant Saint Hall, the Lord of the Snowfall Peak, Zhou Yuan, appeared on the teleportation formation in his white robes. He walked out of the teleportation formation excitedly, and without any hesitation, he immediately rose into the air with Radiant Saint Hall. He hurried towards the headquarters of the Radiant Saint Hall. This trip has been worth it. It really has been worth it. It really hasn't been for nothing. Although I've basically spent all my savings over the years, it's all worth it now that I've bought that item. With that item, my battle prowess is no weaker than those with a mid-7-colored soul core. Although my cultivation is the weakest among the 9 of us, as long as I use that item, my battle prowess will probably be enough to make it into the top 3. The Lord of the Snowfall Peak was extremely excited. He had indeed benefited greatly from this trip. It was enough for him to stand out in the competition between the chosen saint and become a rather famous figure. Everyone would know about him. This was a great honor to the Lord of the Snowfall Peak. Glory to him was the beginning of a beautiful future. The Lord of the Snowfall Peak left the city very soon. He flew high in the sky with Radiant Saint Hall. There were no teleportation formations for him to use for the rest of the journey, so he could only fly slowly. However, just as the Peak Master of the Snowfall Peak was flying over a barren mountain, a black figure suddenly soared into the sky from below, directly blocking his path. "Sir, who are you? Why have you blocked my path?" The Lord of the Snowfall Peak came to a halt. He frowned impatiently. He was in a hurry to return to the Radiant Saint Hall right now, so that he could make his final preparation for the competition between the chosen saint. He did not want to waste any time when every second mattered. "Zhou Yuan, have you forgotten me so quickly?" The person who had stopped Zhou Yuan was Jianshun, who had changed his appearance and disguised himself as a burly man. He stared at Zhou Yuan and sneered. His gaze became extremely sharp at that moment. The Lord of the Snowfall Peak was filled with doubt because he did not recognize the black-robed man before him at all. However, when he saw the man's sharp gaze, his heart actually skipped a beat. He felt fearful, and he actually became rather afraid to meet the man's gaze. "This gaze seems rather familiar," thought the Lord of the Snowfall Peak. The Peak Master of the Snowfall Peak thought, but very soon his body violently trembled. He immediately stared at the black-clothed man in disbelief. His heart churned as he cried out, "Why, At this moment, he finally understood who the familiar gaze came from. It was the gaze from Han Xian's second disciple, Chang Yang, after he defeated him. Chang Yang clearly only had a one-colored soul core, yet he had now transformed into a fighter who gave off the presence of a divine king and was surrounded by the laws of strength. The Lord of the Snowfall Peak became covered in cold sweat when he saw this. He was shocked. He deeply understood what it meant to be both a fighter and a radiant Saint Master. However, before the Lord of the Snowfall Peak could think too much about it, Jinshin struck out decisively. He directly sent a palm strike towards Zhou Yuan's head. Not only did the palm strike contain the power of the 13th layer of the chaotic body, but it was also amplified by the laws of strength. As a result, even without using the laws of the sword, his palm strike possessed some might at the primordial realm. It caused the air to explode as space trembled. The Lord of the Snowfall Peak's face changed drastically. He was unable to dodge the palm strike at all, nor was he able to react in time. All he could do was watch as Jinshin's hand rapidly approached him. Bang! Jinshin's hand landed on the Lord of the Snowfall Peak's head without any hesitation. Not only did the terrifying power directly blow up the Lord of the Snowfall Peak's head with the amplification of the laws of strength, but even his body was reduced to mush. Chapter 2351. After killing the Lord of the Snowfall Peak, Jinshin did not stay for long. He turned around and left. He did not touch anything on Zhou Yuan, as he was afraid of leaving behind any traces. Afterwards, Jinshin removed his disguise in a secret place and returned to his identity as Radiant Saint Master Changyang. He avoided the External Affairs Hall and returned to the Soaring Clouds Peak with an extremely low profile. The news of the Lord of the Snowfall Peak's death reached the Radiant Saint Hall very soon. Soon after Jinshin returned to the Soaring Clouds Peak, 3 elders left the Radiant Saint Hall aggressively with a few violet-robed guards. They arrived where the Lord of the Snowfall Peak had died very soon. Looking at the corpse that had basically been reduced to a pile of mush, the faces of the 3 elders from the Sacred Hall who had mobilized so many people sank. They were extremely ugly. Zhou Yuan had died on the path back to the Radiant Saint Hall. It was not far from the headquarters of the Radiant Saint Hall, yet someone was bold enough to kill the Lord of the Peak here. In the eyes of the 3 elders, this was a blatant slap to the face of the Radiant Saint Hall. Investigate. We have to get to the bottom of this. We can't spare Zhou Yuan's murderer. How dare he kill the Lord of a Peak outside our Radiant Saint Hall? This person is looking down on our Radiant Saint Hall. Immediately go back and invite guest Elder Mu Tian over. Get him to turn back time. I want to know everything that happened here. The 3 elders were furious. They did not care about Zhou Yuan's life or death. What they cared about was the dignity of the Radiant Saint Hall. A mighty Peak Lord had actually been killed mercilessly on the path back to the Radiant Saint Hall. If they did not get to the bottom of this matter and apprehend the murderer, the Radiant Saint Hall's dignity would be damaged. Very soon, a gray-robed old man arrived under the lead of a few violet-robed guards. He was Mu Tian. He was not a Radiant Saint Master, but a fighter. He had just reached Infinite Prime and was a guest elder of the Radiant Saint Hall. He possessed the same status as the elders. As soon as Mu Tian arrived, he immediately used a secret technique to turn back time, projecting everything that had happened in the past. Very soon, the details of how the Peak Master of the Snowfall Peak had been killed by Jinshin were clearly displayed. However, whether it was the 3 Hall Elders or guest Elder Mu Tian, they all narrowed their eyes slightly when they saw him obliterate the Peak Master's soul with a single palm strike. This person is very powerful. His battle prowess is probably half a foot into the primordial realm. Even I find it extremely difficult to reverse time, Mu Tian said emotionlessly. From the looks of it, this black-clothed man once had a grudge with Zhou Yuan. The death of the Peak Master of the Snowfall Peak should be considered a vendetta. It doesn't matter why Zhou Yuan died. He's still a lord of a peak after all. Our Sacred Hall will definitely investigate the death of a Peak Lord, record this person's face, and immediately put him on the wanted list. The 3 Temple Elders spoke one after another, decisively ordering the arrest of the black-clothed man. Very soon, the wanted list was issued by the Temple Elders. They began to search for Zhou Yuan's murderer across the entire desolate plain. At the same time, the investigation of the black-clothed man began as well. The Radiant Saint Hall was a peak organization on the desolate plain after all. The more powerful an organization was, the more they cared about their dignity. The death of a peak master on the path back to the Radiant Saint Hall had basically crossed the bottom line of the Radiant Saint Hall. The Radiant Saint Hall would never just drop the matter. At the same time, the white-robed Yin Shui sat on the bed with her eyes closed in the sacred hall of the Radiant Saint Hall. There were less than 3 days until the competition between the chosen saint and the Radiant Saint Hall began. She needed to adjust herself to her peak condition so that she could compete for the position that she yearned for so much. At this moment, the door opened and a graceful woman walked in. Even though she was middle-aged, she was still charming. Her skin was extremely white, and she possessed a mature sense of beauty. Yin Shui greets master. Donglin Yin Shui immediately got off the bed and bowed politely when she saw the middle-aged woman. The middle-aged woman was Donglin Yin Shui's master in the Radiant Saint Hall. She was also an elder of the Radiant Saint Hall. Her name was Mu Shui. Mu Shui nodded. She looked at Donglin Yin Shui gently and said, "Yin Shui, I've come this time to tell you something. Out of the 9 retainers you chose before, the Lord of the Snowfall Peak, Zhou Yuan, has already died. The 9 retainers are missing, and a new one will be decided soon. The Lord of the Snowfall Peak is dead." A strange light immediately flashed through Donglin Yin Shui's eyes when she heard that. That's right. He's dead, and he died on the path back to the Radiant Saint Hall. The person who killed him sure is bold enough to kill him outside the Radiant Saint Hall, said Mu Shui. Master, do you know who killed Zhou Yuan? The Lord of the Snowfall Peak is one of my retainers after all. Now that he's been killed, I can't just stand by and watch, Donglin Yin Shui asked. We already know the appearance of the murderer. It's in this memory crystal. However, you're too weak right now, so you can't avenge Zhou Yuan. This is because the murderer is very powerful. According to our estimations, probably only an elder of the Radiant Saint Hall can deal with him. Adjust your condition properly in the next 2 days. I'll deal with a new retainer for you. Mu Shui placed down the memory crystal before turning around to leave. Master, why don't you let me make the decision for the remaining spot? Donglin Yin Shui immediately said. Mu Shui paused. She glanced back at Donglin Yin Shui and sighed gently. You still want to fight for a spot for that low-level disciple of the Soaring Clouds Peak? It's a pity that he's too weak. Master, I owe Chang Yang a huge favor. Please help a group of disciples this time, and let me return the favor. Otherwise, I'll feel guilty and my thoughts won't be clear. It'll probably affect my future cultivation, Donglin Yin Shui begged bitterly. Mu Shui sighed gently. A sliver of helplessness appeared on her face. All right, I'll do as you say. I'll try my best to persuade the other elders for you, but I can't do anything about it in the end. Master, Jianshun also sat in his dwelling on the Soaring Clouds Peak. The light in his eyes flickered constantly as he sank into his thoughts. Although the Lord of the Snowfall Peak's death has opened up a spot among the 9 retainers, Donglin Yin Shui has also said that she's not completely confident. As a result, I can't place all my hopes on Donglin Yin Shui. Chapter 2352. On the 2nd floor of the Inata Tower, Xianming currently sat on the ground and cultivated diligently. A layer of dense and sacred radiant saint force enveloped him as the laws of the hallowed revolved around him. He was working hard towards the soul tree of a hallowed saint master. This was because all the peak hallowed saint masters of the Divine King of the Radiant Saint Hall were threatened by an extremely powerful great demon. As a result, Xianming dared not leave this place unless he broke through. He dared not go to the outside world at all. His freedom would be restricted for the rest of his life. As a result, only by breaking through and condensing a soul tree, becoming an existence equivalent to the primordial realm among fighters, could he regain his freedom. Xianming. At this moment, the illusionary figure condensed from a sliver of Jinshin's soul appeared before Xianming silently. At this moment, he was forced to interrupt Xianming's cultivation. He called out gently, rousing Xianming from his cultivation. Brother Jinshin, long time no see. All right, how's the situation in the outside world recently? Have you shaken off the heavenly king of Azure Brilliance's pursuit? You've gone to the desolate plain? Xianming ended his cultivation and asked a few questions right from the start. In particular, When he mentioned the desolate plain, his eyes were filled with undisguised eagerness. "I'm already on the desolate plain," said Jinshin. Xianming immediately roused with interest when he heard that. He said excitedly, "Really? You're already on the desolate plain? That's great, that's really great. All right, brother Jinshin, where are you on the desolate plain right now? Can you? Xianming hesitated. Jinshin smiled. "Xianming, just say what you want to say." Xianming hesitated for a while before making up his mind. He clasped his fist at Jinshin and said, "Brother Jinshin, can you pay a visit to the Radiant Saint Hall and tell my father that I'm still alive? After all, I've left the Barren State for far too long. In all these years, in order to prevent the great demon from divining anything, I've completely cut off all contact with my father. Right now, I don't even know if my father is doing well. Of course. However, your father is one of the 8 vice leaders of the Radiant Saint Hall. He's great, so it probably won't be that easy for me to see him." Jinshin agreed without any hesitation. Xianming's actions were exactly what he wanted. "That's easy." Xianming bit his finger and poured a droplet of blood into a jade bottle. Afterwards, he passed it to Jinshin and said, "Hallowed Saint Masters who have reached my father's level of cultivation can sense their bloodline strongly. Jinshin, take this jade bottle and open it near the Radiant Saint Hall. As long as my father is in the Radiant Saint Hall, he'll definitely sense it." Jinshin stowed away the jade bottle with Xianming's blood. After a moment of thought, he said, "Just this isn't enough. If your father misunderstands and thinks that I've obtained this droplet of blood through some unscrupulous means, I'll be in trouble. Then I'll write a letter to my father and tell him that you, Jinshin, are my best friend." Xianming immediately took out a jade slip from his space ring and began inscribing information in it with the senses of his soul. "Hold on. I've changed my name on the Barren Plain, so please don't use my name as Jinshin. Just use Changyang. Also, don't mention anything about me to your father. You can't even tell him about the existence of this tower. You must have sensed it as well. This tower can obscure the heavenly secrets, so it must be of great quality. If your father learns about it, he might try to lay his hands on me," Jinshin warned sternly. He could not be careless about this matter. Xianming thought that Jinshin was worried about the Azure Pung King's pursuit, so he swore, "Brother Jinshin, don't worry. The Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance will never take a single step onto the Barren Plain." Although he said that, Xianming still followed Jinshin's request. He passed the jade slip with his information to Jinshin, taking the initiative for Jinshin to check. After all, he was currently hiding under Jinshin's roof, so he naturally had to listen to Jinshin. He was afraid that if he made Jinshin unhappy, Jinshin would not go to the Radiant Saint Hall to report his safety. Jinshin carefully checked the contents of the jade slip. After confirming that there were no problems, he left the second floor with the jade slip containing Xianming's blood and the jade slip containing his information. He arrived on the 9th floor. Jinshin changed the jade bottle with the droplet of blood on the 9th floor, replacing it with a jade bottle of a higher grade and better quality. No matter how much time has passed in the jade bottle, the blood will still look like it's fresh. As a result, even if Xianming's father sees the blood, he won't be able to tell when it was left behind, Jinshin thought. After making all the preparations and confirming that he had not missed anything, the sliver of Jinshin's soul left the Inata Tower. Jinshin sat in his dwelling on the soaring cloud's peak of the Radiant Saint Hall. He stared at the jade bottle in his hand and hesitated slightly before opening it. At the same time, 2 middle-aged men sat across from each other in a resplendent hall within the sacred hall that stood above the clouds. "Xianzhan, who do you favor in the competition for the position of chosen saint this time?" One of the middle-aged men leisurely tasted the aged wine as he spoke in an unconcerned manner. His figure was rather thin and weak, but his face that was filled with resoluteness carried the dignity of someone who had been in a high position for a long time. He was just like an emperor, giving others the feeling that he was imposing without being angry. The middle-aged man was one of the 8 vice leaders of the Radiant Saint Hall, Ming-He. The middle-aged man called Xianzhan seemed extraordinarily burly. Just his body seemed to possess terrifying power. His chiseled face gave off a sense of coldness, making people shiver. His gaze was extremely sharp as well, such that no one dared to look him in the eye. However, there was always a sliver of worry between his brows, as if he was worried about something that he could not let go of. Xianzhan was also one of the 8 vice leaders of the Radiant Saint Hall. He possessed great authority in the Radiant Saint Hall, an existence only second to the leader. I'm not interested in that. Let's see who wins out of the 5 of them, Xianzhan said emotionlessly. The worry between his brows never dispersed. Hearing this, Emohi looked up at Xianzhan and sighed softly. Are you worried about your precious son again? Xianzhan remained silent. He stared at the sky outside in a daze. Emohi sighed inside when he saw that. He had no idea how to comfort him. After all, Xianming was Xianzhan's only son. Xianzhan had always treated him like his own flesh and blood, doting on him. He had spent his entire life nurturing Xianming. If Xianming really did die, Emohi had no idea how severe of a blow it would be to Xianzhan. However, at this moment, Xianzhan's body suddenly trembled violently. Resplendent light shone from his eyes in a single moment, and he leapt to his feet. He stared fixedly in a certain direction as he could not help but become excited. In the next moment, he took a step and vanished. He had left the sacred hall like he had teleported, appearing in the mountains below the sacred hall. Chapter 23:54. Jianshan sat in his dwelling on the soaring cloud's peak. He stared at the open jade bottle in his hand as he waited quietly. He knew that Xianming's father would be able to sense his son's bloodline. However, this sensation would only work within a certain range. Once the distance was too great, even an expert like Xianming's father would lose his ability to sense his son's bloodline. I hope Xianming's father hasn't left the Radiant Saint Hall. Jian Chun prayed inside. Jian Chun prayed inside. If he wanted to enter the Tower of Radiance successfully in his current situation, he really would need the assistance of Xianming's father. This was because every single retainer among the 5 candidates had the support of someone behind them. If Jianshan did not find a backer, how would he be able to compete against them? As a result, Jianshan had no choice but to find Xianming's father. However, at this moment, Jianshan suddenly sensed danger. In the next moment, his vision blurred, and a white-robed, burly, middle-aged man with a chiseled face silently appeared before him. The middle-aged man had arrived silently like a ghost. The simple formations that Jianshan had cast down outside the dwelling were completely useless. The middle-aged man was one of the 8 vice leaders of the Radiant Saint Hall, Xianzhan. As soon as Xianzhan arrived, he stared at the jade bottle in Jianshan's hand with his sharp eyes. He could not help but become excited on his cold, resolute face. Where did you obtain this droplet of blood? Xianzhan asked. His gaze was as sharp as a sword as he stared at Jianshan firmly. Jianshan immediately felt a piercing pain. Xianzhan's gaze was just too sharp. It actually made Jianshan feel pain all over. Jianshan immediately became respectful. He bowed toward Xianzhan and said, Senior must be Xianming's father. A gleam of light flashed through Xianzhan's eyes when he heard that. He growled, You actually know about Ming'er? Tell me, how's Ming'er right now? Don't worry, Senior. I have a message from Xianming, Jianshan said before taking out the jade slip Xianming had given him. Xianzhan was unable to contain his excitement when he heard that it was a message from Xianming. He snatched the jade slip from Jianshan eagerly and immediately checked the information inside. Ming'er is still alive. He's still alive. With that thought, Xianzhan read through all the contents of the jade slip. A smile that he had not seen for many years actually appeared on his cold, resolute face. At that moment, he seemed to have become much more relaxed. Indeed, after learning that Xianming was still alive, Xianzhan finally felt a huge weight lifted from his heart. He truly felt relieved. Where's Ming? Right now. And when did you meet Ming? Xianzhan's gaze towards Jianshan immediately became amiable. This was because Xianming had clearly pointed out that Changyang was his friend and had helped him in the past. As a result, Xianzhan was naturally much friendlier towards someone who had helped his son and brought him news. Xianming is in a very safe place. There's no need to worry about the great demon. He spoke of finding him there at all. It's inconvenient for me to tell you the exact location. I met Xianming around a few years ago, Jinshin replied. Xianzhan became cautious. I was careless. If that's the case, you can't tell me where Xianming is. That person is just too powerful. His comprehension of the ways has completely surpassed the Hallmasters. People at that level all possess heaven-defying abilities. Once you tell him, he might be able to find Ming Er's whereabouts directly. Xianzhan paused there. He stared at Jianshan in interest and said, You're called Changyang, right? Since you're acquainted with Ming Er and have helped him in the past, I'll repay this favor for him as his father. Changyang, may I ask if you're willing to accept me as your master? Once you accept me as your master, I will nurture you without holding back until you reach mid-7-colored soul core, Xianzhan said directly. Xianzhan directly considered taking Jianshan as a disciple. If news of this spread, it would be enough to throw the entire Radiant Saint Hall into an uproar. Even the 5 candidates were taught by the elders in the Radiant Saint Hall. None of them had the right to accept a vice leader as their master. If they could become a vice leader's disciple, their status would immediately skyrocket, even if they were an ordinary disciple with a weaker cultivation. They would become someone who stood above the 5 candidates. Their future would be limitless. Even the status of chosen saint was not as valuable as becoming a vice leader's disciple. This was because the chosen saint only changed once every 1,000 years. A chosen saint could only receive 1,000 years of nurturing, but there was no time limit for becoming a vice leader's disciple. Throughout the history of the Radiant Saint Hall, even chosen saints did not have the right to become a vice leader's disciple. They would only receive the guidance of the vice leaders or even the leader from time to time when they were chosen saints. After 1,000 years, they would still be who they were. It could be said that right now, Jianshan was presented with an opportunity that all hallowed saint masters would go crazy over. Even the 5 candidates could only wish for it. However, Jianshan was unmoved. He said apologetically, Thank you for your kind intentions, Senior. However, I already have a master, so I'm unwilling to accept another. Xianzhan was surprised. He could not help but study Jianshan properly. He said, Do you know what it means to become my disciple? Moreover, I, Xianzhan, still have no disciples. If you become my disciple, you will be my only disciple. Your status will only be greater than the disciples of the 7 vice leaders. Understand, as the saying goes, the master leads the way, but cultivation is up to the individual. Now that I've begun under the guidance of my master, I'll have to rely on myself for my future cultivation. Right now, my greatest wish is to enter the Tower of Radiance. It's said that that's where hallowed saint masters originated from, said Jianshan. Xianzhan glanced at Jianshan deeply and said, Since you've already made up your mind, I won't force you. This is my medallion. If you need anything in the future, you can come to the Sacred Hall with this medallion to find me. Xianzhan left behind a medallion and vanished silently. He had left the soaring cloud's peak. Jianshan smiled as he looked at the white medallion that hovered before him. He knew that he had the right to fight for a spot in the Tower of Radiance with this medallion. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. On this day, the battle for the position of chosen saint had officially begun. Early in the morning, many peak masters left their peaks and flew towards the sacred temple that stood above the clouds. The competition for the position of chosen saint was held in the sacred hall. Only the peak lords and a small number of hallowed saint masters with backgrounds had the right to enter that place. As a result, only the peak lords had the right to witness the competition for the position of chosen saint. Jianshan stood outside his dwelling on the soaring cloud's peak as he gazed into the distance. With his vision, he could easily see through the clouds and see the situation 1,000,000 kilometers away. He could clearly see the various peak lords fly towards the sacred hall with radiance at a steady pace politely. Afterwards, a layer of light permeated Jianshan's surroundings. He condensed a pair of radiant wings and flew towards the sacred hall as well. Stop! Who are you? The sacred hall is not a place where you can set foot in. Before Jianshan had even reached the sacred hall, he was stopped by a group of violet-robed guards when he had only approached a certain distance. The group of violet-robed guards glared at Jianshan. Jianshan said nothing. With a flip of his hand, he took out Xianzhan's medallion. The vice leader's medallion. The faces of the violet-robed guards all changed when they saw the medallion in Jianshan's hand. They all cried out as their gazes towards Jianshan underwent an overwhelming change. "May I ask if I have the right to enter this sacred hall now?" Jianshan asked leisurely as he held the medallion. Chapter 2355. Jianshan stowed the medallion away and continued forwards. Finally, he set foot in the sacred hall that stood above the clouds. When he arrived, many hallowed Saint Masters had already gathered on the square of the sacred hall. Most of these hallowed Saint Masters were the divine king of light, lords of peaks. Only a few people like Jianshan, who had not even condensed a 7-colored soul core and had come here with special identities. Even though there was a sea of people, it was extraordinarily quiet. No one made a ruckus. There was not even a whisper of discussion. All the hallowed Saint Masters felt a sense of longing towards the sacred hall. Senior brother, why are you here as well? Strange. How did you get up here? At this moment, Baiyu had arrived by Jianshan's side at some unknown time. Her large, pretty eyes widened as she asked in surprise through a communication technique. Baiyu had already become the disciple of an elder, so her identity was special. Naturally, she had the right to enter the sacred hall. I naturally have my methods. Jianshan smiled mysteriously and replied through a communication technique as well. Why are you being so mysterious? Senior brother, tell me, how did you get up here? Didn't the guards outside stop you? Baiyu became more and more curious as she pestered Jianshan to ask him. The time has come. I announce that the competition for the position of chosen saint has officially begun. At this moment, a great voice rang out. An old elder stood on a huge ring in the center of the square as he spoke with his ancient voice. This is Elder Mu Zhong. I heard from my master that Elder Mu Zhong is the most senior elder in our sacred hall. He is the most prestigious person among all the elders, and his status is only second to the 8 vice leaders. At this moment, Baiyu stopped asking questions and explained to Jianshan. At this moment, Elder Mu Zhong continued. In the past competitions for the position of chosen saint, the 8 retainers were only decided after the position of chosen saint was decided. However, after the discussion between the esteemed leader and the 8 vice leaders, some changes have occurred. The 5 candidates will each choose 9 protectors as their temporary retainers. Once the position of chosen saint is decided, the person who obtains the position of chosen saint will retain the 9 retainers, while the remaining 4 will lose the right to have 9 protectors. However, due to the fact that Donglin Yinshui is participating in the competition for the position of chosen saint, one of the 9 protectors is still missing. As a result, the spot will be chosen from the hallowed Saint Masters present. Next, the elders will nominate the protectors. The death of the Lord of the Snowfall Peak was just too close to the competition for the position of chosen saint. In such a short amount of time, it was already too late to decide on a protector. As a result, the final spot could only be chosen temporarily. With that, the huge square immediately fell silent once again. All the divine king of light gathered there said nothing. However, from the burning desire in many people's eyes, it was quite evident that they were filled with eagerness towards this spot. The Tower of Radiance was a holy land in the hearts of all radiant Saint Masters. It was irresistibly tempting to all the divine king of light, and even the elders. However, the Tower of Radiance only opened once in a very long time. Even when it opened, they did not have the right to enter. As a result, becoming a retainer of the chosen saint was a shortcut to entering the Tower of Radiance. They naturally looked forward to this spot. They all yearned for it. As soon as Elder Mu Zhong finished speaking, the eyes of the elders around him flickered with light. I suggest that the Lord of the Broken Blade Peak, Chengqing, be the 9th protector of Donglin Yinshui. At this moment, an elder finally made a suggestion. I suggest that the Lord of the Black Sun Peak, Lu Chang, take up the final spot. Why don't we get the Lord of the Verdant Peak, Yin Wantian, to be the 9th protector? A few elders all made suggestions. The people they recommended were all lords of peaks, and most of them had mid-7 colored soul cores. Following that, many of the elders of the Sacred Hall began a war of words over who would be the final candidate. All of them were doing their best to fight for it. When Mu Shui, Donglin Yin Shui's master, heard these people's suggestions, she became rather troubled. All of the people they recommended were radiant saint kings. If she really followed her disciple's request at a time like this and let a disciple with a lower cultivation become a ninth protector, it would become a joke. After hesitating slightly, Mu Shui said, "Everyone, why don't we let Donglin Yin Shui make the decision for the final spot?" Even the respected elder Mu Zhong could not bear to watch on as the elders argued. He immediately agreed with Mu Shui. "Yeah, let's listen to Donglin Yin Shui's opinion. It's a pity that Teacher Han Xian's wounds haven't healed, or the final spot would definitely be his." Bai Yu sighed gently as she listened to the debate between the elders. She said to Jian Shun through a communication technique, "Senior brother, who do you think the final spot will go to?" Bai Yu continued to ask. Jian Shun smiled mysteriously when he heard that. He said, "Is there even a need to ask? It'll definitely be your senior brother." TCH, how is that possible? If you were the divine king of radiant light, you might have a chance, but your current cultivation is even lower than mine. It won't be your turn no matter what. Bai Yu glanced at Jianshin. Jianshin smiled faintly and did not explain. At this moment, Donglin Yinxue, one of the 5 candidates, stepped onto the stage as well. She had been below the ring before, so she could clearly see the elders arguing over the final spot. She could not help but secretly feel troubled. Many of the elders were interested in the final spot. They all wanted to take the spot and leave it for the person closest to them. If she suggested giving the spot to a disciple who only possessed a 1-colored soul core at a time like this, there was no need to even think about it. She would be collectively opposed by all the elders. Even if her master spoke up for her, she would not be able to change anything. This was because she had underestimated just how much the elders valued the spot. Donglin Yin Shui bowed towards the elders before hesitating slightly. In the end, she forced herself to say, "I hope the final spot can go to Junior Changyang of the Soaring Clouds Peak." Bai Yu immediately became stunned when she heard what Donglin Yin Shui had said. Her mouth hung agape as disbelief filled her face. On the other hand, many of the peak masters standing below had strange expressions on their faces. Changyang's name was well known among the mountains below the Sacred Hall. As a matter of fact, even many of the lords knew about him. On the other hand, the temple elders on the stage all looked puzzled. The Soaring Clouds Peak? Isn't the Lord of the Soaring Clouds, Peak Han Xian? Who's this Changyang? An elder asked in doubt. He had never heard of Changyang before. Afterwards, a peak lord immediately took the initiative to report everything he knew about Changyang to the elders through communication techniques without missing a single detail. "I was wondering who this Changyang was. So he's actually a low-level disciple." Nonsense, this is nonsense. The protectors are all hallowed saint masters with 7-colored soul cores. What's a mere 1-colored soul core disciple doing here? The protector's mission is to protect the candidates participating in the trial. If a low-level disciple with a 1-colored soul core becomes a protector, who's going to be protecting who? Chapter 2356. Donglin Yinxue felt powerless as she listened to the voices of objection. With so many elders objecting, even if her master recommended Changyang, it would be hopeless under these circumstances. After all, Changyang's cultivation was just too weak. He only had a 1-colored soul core. It was impossible for him to gain the attention and support of a single elder with such a weak cultivation. If he became a protector with such a cultivation, would the candidate not have to protect him instead? Donglin Yin Shui sighed gently. She had already done her best. She had done everything she could, but the final outcome was not something she could change. When she thought about the pure soul Changyang had given her, Donglin Yin Shui could not help but feel deeply ashamed. She was rather ashamed to face Changyang. This was because she had never thought that something would happen to the chosen saint this time. In the past battles for the position of Son of Saint, the 9 retainers would be chosen by the Son of Saint himself after the son of Saint was decided. This was because that was the right of the chosen saint. In this year's chosen saint battle, the 9 retainers had all been chosen by the temple elders and some other major powers. Hee, you're still thinking about Changyang? It's said that Changyang has been missing for a very long time already. No one knows if he's still alive. Even if he's still alive, he doesn't have the right to set foot in the Radiant Saint Hall, even if he's still alive. Isn't it a huge joke for a low-level disciple who doesn't even have the right to set foot in the Sacred Hall to become one of the 9 retainers? At this moment, a voice rang out from below the ring. The white-robed Gongzheng Exen currently stood below the ring and spoke without any scruples. Immediately, Giant Shin's voice rang through the entire square, allowing all the hallowed Saint Masters gathered there to hear him clearly. During the past 2 years, Giant Shin had always been in seclusion. He was certain that Changyang was dead after he heard that someone from his clan had gone to deal with him. This was because he refused to believe that Changyang could escape from the experts sent by his clan with a mere 1-colored soul core. He had only emerged yesterday, so he did not receive the news that Changyang had returned to the Radiant Saint Hall. Changyang actually doesn't even have the right to set foot in the Sacred Hall. It looks like he's also a low-level disciple with no background. Not only is his cultivation low, but he also has no background. He's just dreaming if he wants to become one of the 9 retainers of the chosen saint with those conditions. Donglin Yinshui has actually chosen Changyang to become the 9th protector. This is rather intriguing. Giant Shin's words immediately led to a discussion among the lords of the various peaks in the surroundings. Many divine king of the Radiant Saint Hall whispered to one another secretly. Jian Chun frowned slightly. He was much more powerful than all the divine king of the Radiant Saint Hall present, and his senses had become extremely shocking after his soul had mutated. As a result, many of the messages from the divine king of the Radiant Saint Hall were unable to escape his senses. He heard them clearly. A cold light flashed through Jinshin's eyes. He did not continue to hide it. He called out from the crowd, who said, "I don't have the right to set foot in the Sacred Hall." Jinshin had called out directly, so he immediately attracted the gazes of everyone present. At that moment, it was not just the surrounding divine king of the Radiant Saint Hall. Even the elders on the stage looked towards Jinshin. Donglin Yinshui naturally discovered Jinshin as well. A sliver of surprise immediately flashed through her eyes. Clearly, she had no idea why Jinshin had appeared in the Sacred Hall. According to her understanding of Jinshin, Jinshin did not have the right to be here. Changyang, it's actually you. Giant Shin released the senses of his soul without any hesitation. When he discovered Jinshin, he became stunned. The person he believed to be dead was actually still standing there alive. He was extremely surprised by this outcome. However, Giant Shin growled with a sunken face. Changyang, why have you appeared in the Sacred Hall? You don't have the right to be here. Afterwards, Giant Shin did not wait for Jinshin's reply. He immediately said to the elders on the stage, "Master, elders, Changyang has snuck into the Sacred Hall. He has broken the rules of the Radiant Saint Hall. Please investigate this matter." Donglin Yinshui's face changed slightly when she heard that. She secretly worried for Jinshin inside. Not just anyone could enter the Sacred Hall. Even peak lords could not set foot in there without important matters. If Changyang had really snuck in, it would be a great crime. We're in trouble. We're in big trouble now. Senior brother, what do we do now? Baiyu grabbed Jinshin's arm from beside Jinshin as she became worried. She also believed that her senior brother had snuck in because, according to her understanding of him, he did not have the right to set foot in the Sacred Hall. Many of the elders on the stage became stern as well. They all stared at Jinshin with piercing gazes as an invisible pressure gradually radiated from the stage. "You're Changyang? Changyang, tell us the truth. How did you sneak into the Sacred Hall? If you can't give us a reason, you'll be in big trouble," Elder Mu Zhong said extremely sternly. Jinshin remained calm. He clasped his fist towards the stage first before saying, "Disciple Changyang of the Soaring Clouds Peak greets the elders." "Elder Mu Zhong, that's a little too serious. I only have a 1-colored soul core. How am I supposed to infiltrate the heavily guarded Sacred Hall? I'll probably be captured by the enforcers before I even get close to the Sacred Hall." Since I'm able to make it here, I've done so openly. Did any of you allow Changyang to set foot in the sacred hall? Elder Muzhong looked at the other elders on the stage. At the same time, he sent the senses of his soul into the sacred hall to ask the other elders. The sacred hall was an inviolable existence in the hearts of all radiant saint masters. They could not allow any blasphemy. If a low-level disciple really did set foot in the sacred hall without permission, it would definitely be a huge crime that could not be forgiven easily. The other elders all shook their heads when they heard Elder Mu Zhong's question. Master, please help Changyang. I owe him a very great favor. Donglin Yinshui also realized the severity of the matter, so she hurriedly asked Mu Shui secretly. Mu Shui shook her head gently and said sternly, Changyang's actions are blasphemy against the sacred hall. He's acting too recklessly. I will never help him. Very soon, Elder Mu Zhong received a reply from the other elders. None of them had allowed Changyang to set foot in the sacred hall. At that moment, Elder Mu Zhong's gaze sharpened. Chapter 23:57. With that, two violet-robed guards immediately flew towards Jianshan emotionlessly. On the stage, Donglin Yinshui sighed gently. She looked at the violet-robed guards that approached Jianshan and felt powerless. Although she was one of the 5 candidates and possessed a certain level of status in the Radiant Saint Hall, she really was unable to help Jianshan at a time like this. It's over, it's over. Second senior brother, what do we do? Beside Jianshan, Bai was filled with worry. She was extremely worried about Jianshan's fate. As the disciple of an elder, she knew all the rules of the Radiant Saint Hall extremely well. She understood just how sacred the sacred hall was. Trespassing without permission was definitely a great crime, and the consequences would be extremely severe. Changyang, even if you don't die outside, I definitely won't let you have an easy time in the future. And who knows what the people in the clan are doing? Didn't they say they've already sent experts to kill Changyang? Why is he still alive? Jianshan sneered in the crowd as a cold light flashed through his eyes. This disciple called Changyang is in big trouble now. A mere disciple with a one-colored soul core dares to trespass into the sacred hall. He's blaspheming the sacred hall. Let alone him, even the Lord of the Soaring Clouds Peak probably won't be able to avoid punishment. This is a lesson for us. We have to watch over our disciples strictly after we return, just in case disaster befalls us in the future and we get dragged down by our disciples. At the same time, all the radiant God Kings gathered their whisper to one another secretly as they discussed the matter. At this moment, the 2 violet-robed guards had already arrived before Jianshan. A thick chain had appeared in their hands. The chain was forged from a special metal, and it was engraved with layers of formations. Once bound by the chain, not only would it seal up the person's cultivation, but it would also become extremely heavy, making it difficult for the person to move. Only people who had committed great crimes in the Radiant Saint Hall could receive such punishment. Hold on. Just when the 2 guards were about to bind Jianshan with the chain, Jianshan suddenly called out. He stared at Elder Mu Zhong calmly and said loudly, Elder Mu Zhong, may I ask why you've determined that I've trespassed on the sacred hall and want to arrest me? You've trespassed on the sacred hall without the permission of any elders. It's a great crime, Elder Mu Zhong said. In other words, I need the permission of an elder to enter the sacred hall. Even my medallion doesn't have a right to let me in? Or in other words, the authority granted by my medallion isn't as great as the authority granted by the elders? Jianshan said loudly. Afterwards, with a flip of his hand, he took out the medallion Xianzhan had given him and raised it high above his head. When Elder Mu Zhong saw the medallion that represented the vice leader in Jianshan's hand, his old body immediately trembled. His eyes suddenly narrowed as he became shocked. That's the vice leader's medallion. It's vice leader Xianzhan. How is this possible? Why does he have vice leader Xianzhan's medallion? What's his relationship with vice leader Xianzhan? He's a radiant saint master with a one-colored soul core, and he's completely unknown. Why does he have vice leader Xianzhan's medallion? Not only was Elder Mu Zhong shocked the moment he saw the medallion in Jinshan's hand, but even the expressions of the other elders changed. They were filled with disbelief. As for the divine king below the stage, they stopped discussing secretly at that moment. They all stared at the medallion that represented the vice leader in Jinshin's hand. Their expressions changed rapidly. Donglin Yinshue's eyes were filled with a strange light as well. She stared at the medallion in Jinshin's hand without blinking at all. A smear of blankness appeared on her alluring face, as well as some doubt and confusion. She was filled with many questions the moment she saw the medallion. Since Changyang possessed the vice leader's medallion, he definitely had quite a deep relationship with the vice leader. If he wanted to enter the Tower of Radiance, he could have just told the vice leader. Although the conditions for entering the Tower of Radiance were very harsh, it was only a matter of a single sentence for the vice leader to make an exception for a disciple with his authority. However, why did Changyang offer up an extremely precious pure soul and go through so much trouble to become her 9th retainer so that he could enter the Tower of Radiance? Suddenly, Donglin Yinshue discovered that she seemed to have completely lost track of Changyang's intentions. Yinshue, do you still not understand? Changyang wants to become your 9th retainer because he wants to get close to you on purpose. Yinshue's master, Mushue, seemed to have seen through everything. She said to Donglin Yinshue secretly. Donglin Yinshue carefully thought back to how she had met Changyang. She did not miss out on a single detail. In the end, she shook her head gently. No, master. Changyang shouldn't be someone like that. I won't say too much about that. You're naturally intelligent, so you can judge for yourself, said Mushue. Afterwards, she paused and continued. However, since Changyang possesses Vice Leader Xianzhan's medallion, it means that Vice Leader Xianzhan is supporting him. As a result, his status in the Radiant Saint Hall is no weaker than yours. It might even surpass yours. Out of the 8 Vice Leaders, Vice Leader Xianzhan is the most powerful. The other 7 Vice Leaders all have to show some respect to Vice Leader Xianzhan. As a result, if Vice Leader Xianzhan is supporting Changyang, there's basically no one who would dare to provoke him in the Radiant Saint Hall. Mushue explained to Donglin Yinshue. Her intentions were rather thought-provoking. Donglin Yinshue remained silent. She looked at Jinshin, who stood in the crowd, with mixed feelings. At that moment, she could not help but doubt Jinshin's true intentions. Was he really trying to get close to her, like her master had said? After all, she was the prodigy of the Radiant Saint Hall. There were countless people who pursued her, so she had already become accustomed to it. However, was Changyang one of them? Jinshin's face immediately became extremely ugly in the crowd, while Bai Yu, who stood beside Jinshin, was stunned and excited. On the stage, Elder Mu Zhong glanced at Jinshin deeply. With his strength, he could naturally tell with a single glance that Jinshin's medallion was real. The 2 violet-robed guards backed off obediently after Jinshin showed them the Vice Leader's medallion. This was because the elders did not have the right to judge the people with the Vice Leader's medallion, so Elder Mu Zhong's orders naturally did not apply. Since you possess the Vice Leader's medallion, you obviously have a right to enter the Sacred Hall, Elder Mu Zhong said to Changyang. Afterwards, he looked around and continued. Let's move on to the final protector. Elder Mu Zhong paused there. After careful consideration by Old Man, the final protector will be chosen by the Broken Blade Peak. Just when Elder Mu Zhong was about to announce the final protector, his voice came to a halt. Soon after, an extremely rare expression of respect was revealed on his elderly face, while extreme astonishment quickly surfaced in his elderly eyes. Chapter 2358. What? A low-level Radiant Saint Master with a one-colored soul core is actually going to be the protector of the final candidate. How is this possible? Changyang only has a one-colored soul core. How can he take on such a heavy responsibility with such a weak cultivation? Unbelievable. He's actually going to get a low-level disciple with a one-colored soul core to be the protector of a candidate with a 4-colored soul core. Just who is going to be the protector of who? This is unprecedented. This really is unprecedented. Throughout history, both protectors and retainers have always been the divine king of light. This is the first time someone with a one-colored soul core has taken on such a heavy responsibility. The divine king of light on the square fell into an uproar when Elder Mu Zhong announced the list. At that moment, all of them were stunned by this outcome. The vice leader must have spoken. It looks like the relationship between Chang Yang and the vice leader isn't as simple as it seems. It can't be helped. Who told Chang Yang to have a vice leader support? And it's vice leader Xianzhan. Although the retainers of chosen saints have always been divine kings throughout history, the Radiant Saint Hall has never made a clear rule that only a divine king can become the retainer or protector of a candidate. As a result, appointing a low-level disciple with a one-colored soul core to be the protector does not go against the Sacred Hall's rules. The many divine kings of light whispered to one another, engaging in an intense discussion through communication techniques. Even though the huge square seemed peaceful on the surface, to the point where even the drop of a pin could be heard, the divine kings of light gathered there were in an uproar. Their gazes towards Jianshan were filled with mixed feelings. There was envy and jealousy. The authoritative elders on the stage fell silent as well. They all looked at Jianshan with extremely mixed feelings. They could naturally sense that Elder Mu Zhong had changed his mind in the end because he had received orders from above. Even though none of them were optimistic about this, none of them dared to object, including Elder Mu Zhong. None of them dared to voice their displeasure. This was because they understood in their hearts that the orders that Elder Mu Zhong had received had most likely come from Deputy Hall Chief Xianzhan. Forget about the fact that they, as elders, had no right to object to Deputy Hall Chief Xianzhan's decision. Even the other 7 Deputy Hall Chiefs had to give him some face. Vice Leader Xianzhan values Chang Yang far more than I expected. Yin Shui, this is an opportunity for you. If you can establish a connection with Vice Leader Xianzhan through Chang Yang, you'll benefit immeasurably in the future. Mu Shui's master said to Donglin Yin Shui secretly. At that moment, she no longer dared to underestimate Chang Yang, who only had a one-colored soul core. Donglin Yin Shui stood in the ring. She stared at the ordinary-looking Chang Yang in the crowd with some mixed feelings. She remained silent. How is this possible? To one side, Giant Shin, who also stood in the crowd, was completely dumbfounded. Bai Yu, who stood beside Jianshan, was stunned by this outcome as well. Her mouth hung agape as disbelief filled her face. I now announce that the competition between the chosen saints has officially begun. The 5 candidates and all protectors are to enter the ring immediately. Elder Mu Zhong's voice rang out again at this moment. Hearing this, the other 4 prospective holy sons and dozens of Dao protectors immediately flew onto the arena. Junior sister, I'll be going up first, Jianshan said to Bai Yu before controlling his Radiant Saint force and entering the ring under the envious gazes of the Divine King. Soon, more than 40 guardians were led by their respective prospective holy sons and stood in 5 different camps. However, all of their gazes would sweep past Jianshan, whether intentionally or not. Apart from the 5 candidates, everyone else on the ring was either a divine king or an elder. Jianshan stood there with a mere one-colored soul core. He really was a little out of the ordinary. Elder Mu Zhong stared at everyone with shining eyes and said, "Next, all of you will be sent into a miniature world. There are various vicious beasts in the miniature world, and the strongest among them are at the late Divine King. Your mission as protectors is to ensure the safety of the candidates in there." Afterwards, Elder Mu Zhong's gaze landed on the 5 candidates. He said, "As for the 5 of you, your mission is to search for radiant origin pearls in the miniature world. The radiant origin pearls are extremely special. They form naturally in the Tower of Radiance, so they cannot be sensed with the senses of the soul. Only those with extremely great talent and extremely close to Radiant Saint Force will be able to sense their existence within a certain range. This round is extremely important to all of you. Only the 2 people who obtain the most radiant origin pearls in the end will be able to continue to the next round. The remaining 3 will be directly eliminated. Remember, the duration of this round is a year. During this time, the 5 of you are forbidden from engaging in battles to the death, where you will lose your right to compete for the position of chosen saint. Towards the end, Elder Mu Zhong's voice became extremely stern. Afterwards, Elder Mu Zhong took out an ancient seal. As soon as the ancient seal appeared, it immediately gave off a powerful pulse of energy. It was mixed with the power of space, which interfered with the operation of the surrounding space. Elder Mu Zhong swung the ancient seal at the sky, and immediately, the space above the ring pulsed violently. A huge space gate slowly formed. This miniature world is called the world of Moon and Star. In order to prevent overly powerful beasts from appearing, Elder He Tian will travel with you. Now, all participants, enter the world of Moon and Star immediately. With that, the 5 candidates and 45 protectors all rose into the air with Radiant Saint Force behind the 5 candidates, charging into the space gate. As soon as Jianshun set foot in the world of Moon and Star, he discovered that he and everyone else stood on a mountain peak. The peak of the mountain seemed to have been shaved off, so there was only a small platform at the top. Jianshun closed his eyes gently. He could clearly sense that the laws of the world here were not complete. The entire world was much weaker than the Saint's world. Chapter 2359. Welcome to the world of Moon and Star. The world of Moon and Star is a medium-sized miniature world where yin, yang, and the 5 elements are incomplete. The reason why it's called the world of Moon and Star is because there's only a single star and a single moon. There's no sun. Just as everyone stared at the world of Moon and Star curiously, an old voice rang out from up ahead. A bald old man was sitting cross-legged in front of the crowd. The old man had an ordinary appearance, but he was abnormally thin. Even though he was wrapped in a large white robe, everyone could still see his thin and frail body. Greetings to Elder He Tian, Yin Shui, Jianshin, Xian Bin, and Shurta all bowed politely when they saw the old man. Many of the divine king present did not know the old man's true identity, but the 5 candidates had the right to enter the sacred hall, so they came into contact with many elders. As a result, they recognized many of the elders. The protectors standing behind the 5 quasi-saints bowed respectfully after learning of the old man's identity. Elder He Tian waved his hand and said, "There's no need for that. There's no need for such formalities. I'll give you a detailed explanation of the situation of the world of Moon and Star now." Elder He Tian paused before continuing. Even though the world of Moon and Star is a medium-sized world, it's extremely vast. Even with the senses of my soul, I can only envelop a 10th of the world of Moon and Star. A few vicious beasts live in the world of Moon and Star. Due to the special environment of the world of Moon and Star, the mental development of these vicious beasts is very low. As a matter of fact, even though many of the vicious beasts possess great strength, they still do not possess intelligence. They only act on instinct. Before you came here, the Hall Elders had already purged the vicious beasts of the world of Moon and Star, slaying all the primordial realm beasts. As a result, the strongest of the vicious beasts that remain are only late divine king. You 5 prospective holy sons will each have one of these tokens. Once you're faced with a life or death crisis, activate this token immediately. Within the realm of Moon and Star, no matter how far away they were, Old Man could instantly sense the location of the token and come to their rescue. However, once this token is activated, it means that you have already lost the qualifications to compete for the position of Saint. All right, I've said what I need to say. Now, you can act on your own. How many origin pearls you can find in the end will depend on your own luck. The gate to the world of Moon and Star will only open in a year's time. At that time, you can just gather here. Elder Hetien, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, did not move at all. He gave a serious order to the crowd, then waved his hand and dismissed them. Afterwards, the 5 candidates left the mountain peak with their respective protectors. They did not travel in groups. Instead, they each chose a direction and sped off. Even though there were many vicious beasts on par with the Divine King in the world of Moon and Star, the candidates did not show any fear at all. This was because there were many Divine King among their protectors, and they were all powerful hallowed Saint Masters who were known to be unmatched at the same level. With so many hallowed Saint Masters with them, They were confident that they could even put up a fight against peak divine, king vicious beasts. Changyang, you're the weakest. Remember, you can't run around recklessly here. You can't deal with any vicious beast that appears here. At this moment, Donglin Yin Shui suddenly turned around and said to Jinshin. She looked at Jinshin's ordinary face with her dark, beautiful eyes, and an undetectable sliver of mixed feelings appeared. Ever since she first met Jinshin at the moon's reflection lake, the feeling that Jinshin gave Donglin Yin Shui was that of confidence, maturity, and steadiness. He possessed a calmness where he could remain unfazed even if the sky collapsed. His bearing was completely different from the so-called prodigies she usually saw. Moreover, whenever she saw Jinshin's gaze towards her would always be as calm as water. It was completely different from the radiant Saint Masters who pursued her. As a result, Donglin Yin Shui believed that Jinshin had approached her proactively and offered up a precious pure soul just to enter the Tower of Radiance. After all, the Tower of Radiance was a holy land that all Radiant Saint Masters yearned for. As a Radiant Saint Master, Jinshin's yearning for the Tower of Radiance could not be any more normal. However, ever since Jinshin took out Vice Leader Xian Zhan's medallion, Donglin Yin Shui began to doubt Jinshin's intentions for approaching her. Coupled with the explanation from her master, Mu Shui basically made Donglin Yin Shui believe her master's words completely. With the Vice Leader's medallion, obtaining a spot to enter the Tower of Radiance was nothing difficult at all. However, why did Jinshin offer up a pure soul and go through so much trouble to become her protector? After all, she was only one of the 5 candidates. Even Donglin Yin Shui was not confident that she could successfully become the chosen saint in the end. However, Jinshin knew this, yet he still insisted on doing so. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell, with a single glance, that he was purposefully approaching Donglin Yin Shui. Jinshin rubbed his nose when he heard what Donglin Yin Shui said. He had no idea how to react. He had never thought that he would actually end up being protected by someone who was equivalent to a deity. However, Donglin Yin Shui did not look at Jinshin for too long. She looked away rather indifferently. After confirming that Jinshin was purposefully approaching her, her heart became rather cold in a single moment. The distance between her and Jinshin unknowingly grew further and further. This was because she found Jinshin's actions very repulsive. Jinshin's various unusual actions in the Radiant Saint Hall had left a proper impression on her, but collapsed at this moment. As a result, Jinshin was no different from the other suitors in her eyes. Ah, Junior Changyang, I, Le Fan, am a few years older than you, so I'll just call you Junior Brother. You only need to stay by Junior Yin Shui's side in the world of Moon and Star this time. You don't need to worry about anything else. We'll deal with it. At this moment, one of Yin Shui's protectors said. He was a middle-aged man, a mid-god king. Jinshin had learned about this person before. He was the lord of the Cloud Mist Peak, one of the peaks of the Radiant Saint Hall, Le Fan. His cultivation was even greater than the Soaring Clouds Peak's Peak Master Han Xian and the Snowfall Peak's Peak Master Zhou Yuan. Ha, that's right. Leave all the beasts we come across to us. Junior Changyang, you just need to take care of Junior Yin Shui. Afterwards, a few more protectors spoke up. They all smiled and treated Jinshin politely. They even flattered him slightly. Even though Jinshin's cultivation was the lowest among them, so he still needed someone to protect him as a protector. However, with Vice Leader Xian Zhan's support, none of the protectors dared to offend him. They even tried their best to befriend Jinshin. This was because they all knew that the reason why Jinshin could become a protector was all because of Vice Leader Xian Zhan's arrangements. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for him to get past Elder Mu Zhong. As for their motives, the few peak masters who considered themselves to be astute and far-sighted were naturally well aware of it. Jinshin exchanged some pleasantries with the protectors casually before looking at Donglin Yin Shui. He asked, "Can you sense the location of the Radiant Origin Pearl?" The reason why he asked that was because Jinshin could vaguely sense a pulse that was extremely similar to Radiant Saint Force from a certain place in front of him. The pulse was extremely obscure and wondrous. He could sense its existence not because his senses were great, but because the laws of the hallowed he comprehended seemed to resonate with the pulse. Chapter 2360. It looks like Donglin Yin Shui hasn't sensed the pulse that's extremely similar to Radiant Saint Force. However, I can't be certain whether the pulse comes from the Radiant Origin Pearl or not. Jinshin thought. He had already learned from Elder Mu Zhong that the Radiant Origin Pearls originated from the Tower of Radiance. They were extremely special, where they could not be sensed with the senses of the soul. Only those with extremely great talent who were extremely close to Radiant Saint Force could sense their existence. Did the so-called extremely great talent who were extremely close to Radiant Saint Force refer to the ranks of geniuses in the Radiant Saint Hall? 9-star geniuses were peak talent in the Radiant Saint Hall, and all the candidates taking part in the competition this time were 9-star geniuses. If the pulse really does come from the Radiant Origin Pearl, doesn't that mean my talent is even greater than Donglin Yin Shui's? Jinshin thought. He stared straight ahead. He could sense that the pulse was 100 kilometers away from him. At that moment, the group of people were moving in a straight line toward the direction of the energy fluctuation. They all flew around 20 meters above the ground. Even though they had all slowed down out of consideration for Jinshin's cultivation, 100 kilometers was nothing to them. Very soon, Jinshin's group arrived within 20 kilometers of the pulse. At this moment, Jinshin also secretly paid attention to Donglin Yin Shui's reaction, but he discovered that Donglin Yin Shui remained the same as before, as if she had not discovered the pulse at all. When they were 3 miles away from the ripple, the direction in which the group was advancing changed slightly. They were gradually distancing themselves from the source of the ripple. Jinshin stopped decisively when he saw this. He said, "We can't just move around aimlessly like this. Let's take a break and discuss our plan." With that, Jinshin dispersed the Radiant Saint Force around him before everyone agreed. He landed on the ground. As soon as Jinshin stopped, the 8 protectors behind Donglin Yin Shui immediately revealed troubled expressions. They glanced past Jinshin and Donglin Yin Shui and hesitated. They had no idea whether they should continue with Donglin Yin Shui or stop with Jinshin. The 8 of them understood that although they were the protectors of the candidate, they were naturally responsible for protecting Jinshin since Vice Leader Xianzhan was bold enough to allow Jinshin, who only had a 1-colored soul core, into the world of Moon and Star. There were many vicious beasts in the world of Moon and Star, and some of them had even reached the level of the Divine King. They really did not dare to leave Jinshin alone. If anything happened to him and the Vice Leader blamed them, they would not be able to bear the consequences. Donglin Yin Shui, on the other hand, frowned slightly. She looked at Jinshin with some displeasure and said, "Radiant Origin Pearls are extremely difficult to find. All methods of searching are useless. Finding it is completely up to luck. Do you really think you can find a Radiant Origin Pearl by coming up with a useless plan? It's better than running around aimlessly like this, right?" Jinshin said casually. He looked around and just happened to discover a 10-meter-wide boulder 3 kilometers away where the pulse came from. Jinshin's eyes lit up. He said, "There's a boulder there. Let's go sit down first and think of a plan as well, so that we can collect more Radiant Origin Pearls." With that, Jinshin directly flew towards the boulder in the distance. Donglin Yin Shui could not help but feel displeased when she saw how Jinshin did not care about his priorities at all and continued to do whatever he wanted in the world of Moon and Star. Ever since Jinshin's upright image shattered in her heart, she began to view Jinshin in a completely different light. In particular, Donglin Yin Shui felt extremely disgusted by Jinshin's current actions. In Donglin Yin Shui's opinion, Jinshin was basically wasting her precious time. After all, they only had a year to search for Radiant Origin Pearls. Every minute and second was extremely precious. At this moment, Jinshin had already arrived on the boulder by himself. He sat there leisurely, and the pulse he had sensed before came from below the boulder. At such a close distance, Jinshin's senses became even clearer. He could clearly sense that the object that gave off the pulse was a milky white bead buried in the ground. This should be the Radiant Origin Pearl. At that moment, Jinshin had basically confirmed the identity of the bead. At this moment, Donglin Yin Shui flew over with dissatisfaction and impatience under the accompaniment of the 8 protectors. Jianchun sat on the boulder as he silently sensed the distance between Donglin Yin Shui and Donglin Yin Shui. He wanted to know just how close she needed to be to sense the existence of the radiant origin pearl. Finally, when Donglin Yin Shui was a kilometer away from the boulder, her expression immediately changed. In the next moment, joy filled her eyes. She turned into a streak of white light and arrived before the boulder Jianchun sat on as quickly as she could. She called out to Jianchun, "Changyang, move." "What?" Jianchun did not seem to react. He stared at Donglin Yin Shui blankly as he became confused. "I told you to move. I want to shatter this boulder. If you don't move, you can't blame me if you get injured," Donglin Yin Shui called out. Donglin Yin Shui called out. The laws of the hallowed had already condensed around her. The radiant palm had already condensed and was about to strike the rock. Jinshin's expression finally changed when he saw this. Without any hesitation, he directly leaped off the boulder. Although it was impossible for Donglin Yin Shui to injure him, he was currently acting as a radiant Saint Master with a one-colored soul core. Bang! As soon as Jianchun left the boulder, a great sound rang out. A 10-meter-wide boulder had been shattered by Donglin Yin Shui's palm strike, shooting into the air as fragments. And under the mountain rock, a bright white light bloomed, only to see a thumb-sized white bead quietly lying on the ground. The radiant origin pearl. Donglin Yin Shui cried out. She took a step forward and picked up the radiant origin pearl in joy. So this is the radiant origin pearl. It can only be seen with the naked eye. It's impossible to find its traces with the senses of the soul. This radiant origin pearl really is wondrous. At this moment, the 8 protectors all gathered over. They all studied the radiant origin pearl curiously as they clicked their tongues in wonder. At this moment, Donglin Yin Shui suddenly looked at Jianshin doubtfully. She said, "Changyang, I sensed it when I was a kilometer away. You sat on the boulder and were only 10 meters away from the radiant origin pearl. How could you not sense the radiant origin pearl at such a close distance? Don't forget that you're a 9-star genius, while I'm only a 1-star genius," Jianshin said helplessly. He cannot expose his talents so early. You can't blame Junior Changyang for this. The radiant origin pearl is just too difficult to sense. Even with my 7-colored soul core, I only vaguely sensed it when I was 100 meters away, a protector said as soon as Jianshan finished speaking. "Sigh, I'm a 3-star genius and also have a 7-colored soul core, yet I can only vaguely sense the radiant origin pearl when I'm 10 meters away from it. It makes sense that Junior Changyang can't sense it," another protector said in shame, speaking up for Jianshan perfectly. Chapter 2361. Jianshan naturally sensed the change in Donglin Yin Shui's attitude towards him, but he did not care about that. In his opinion, it would be enough as long as he could make Donglin Yin Shui become the chosen saint successfully and earn the right to enter the Tower of Radiance. Vice Leader Xianzhan possessed the authority to directly allow any Radiant Saint Master into the Tower of Radiance. Jianshan did not know about this, but even if he did, he would not be willing to directly go to the Vice Leader. This was because his identity was extremely sensitive, so he did not want to have too much to do with Vice Leader Xianzhan. Otherwise, once the secret of his martial soul force was exposed, it would undoubtedly cause a lot of trouble for Vice Leader Xianzhan. I think as long as there are powerful, vicious beasts, there will definitely be Radiant Origin Pearls. Radiant Origin Pearls are difficult to find. The senses of the soul won't be able to detect their existence, but the vicious beasts won't be able to escape the senses of the soul. As a result, we only need to find the powerful, vicious beasts, Jinshin suggested. The Radiant Origin Pearls were a product of the Tower of Radiance. The reason why they had appeared in the world of Moon and Star was because the Elders had let them in. Since the Elders treated finding the Radiant Origin Pearls as a test, there would definitely be a certain level of difficulty. It would not be something as simple as luck. Donglin Yin Shui immediately frowned when she heard that. In the world of Moon and Star, some powerful, vicious beasts possessed the strength of a divine king. If they really did provoke these vicious beasts, let alone Jianshan, who only had a one-colored soul core, even she with her four-colored soul core would be no different from an ant before these vicious beasts. It was possible to say that the two of them would not even be able to endure the shockwaves of battle against vicious beasts at such a level. Junior Changyang is right. Radiant origin pearls probably exist in the territories of these powerful, vicious beasts. Junior Yin Shui, why don't we go find those vicious beasts? Don't worry, Junior Yin Shui. We have the 8 Divine King Radiant Saints here. Dealing with those vicious beasts with low intelligence will be a piece of cake. Yeah, even if we come across a peak Divine King Radiant Saint vicious beast, we'll only need 2 or 3 people to kill them easily. The vicious beasts here are nothing to worry about. Radiant origin pearls are difficult to find, but it's far too easy for the vicious beasts to find them. The 8 protectors who had come with them were all Saint were fearless. With the laws of the hallowed saint, their battle prowess to become even greater than cultivators of the same level of cultivation. As a result, the vicious beasts in the world not to be taken seriously at all. Radiant Saint next. It was the 8 protectors' turn to lead the way. Their consciousness that belonged to the divine king spread out from them, shrouding the surroundings as they began to actively search for ferocious beasts nearby. At the same time, elsewhere in the world of Moon and Star, a group led by Jianshan had stopped on a plain. 5 of the 9 protectors stood guard in the distance, while the candidate Jianshan had gathered with the other 4 protectors. Jianshan frowned. His face was gloomy. Ever since he had entered the world of Moon and Star, his face had been sunken. Even now, he still had not relaxed. You're either the people closest to our Gongzhen clan, or you're subordinate to our Gongzhen clan. Help me think of a way to kill Changyang in the world of Moon and Star, Jianshan said. Jianshan said with a sunken face. Aside from the other 5 protectors, the remaining 4 all belonged to the Gongzhen clan. As a result, he trusted the 4 of them very much. The 4 protectors gathered around Gongzheng Xin frowned when they heard that. Troubled expressions appeared on their faces. If it were in the past, it would be nothing even if the Radiant Saint Hall discovered us trying to kill Changyang. With our status, the disciplinary hall wouldn't do anything to us. They would only punish us symbolically. But now, everyone knows that Changyang is Vice Leader Xian Zhan's subordinate. His status is different from before. The consequences of killing him are just far too severe. If Vice Leader Xian Zhan personally pursues the matter, even young Master Xian will be dragged into it. Yeah, Vice Leader Xian Zhan isn't as easy to talk to as the other 7 Vice Leaders. Moreover, Vice Leader Xian Zhan is the person you can't afford to offend in the Radiant Saint Hall aside from the Supreme Leader. Young Master Xian, you can't act on impulse. Young Master Xian, you have to remain calm. Changyang has Vice Leader Xian Zhan's support, so you can't afford to offend him. You have to understand who Vice Leader Xian Zhan is. He's an expert that even the ancestor of our Gongzhen clan has to treat with respect. If Vice Leader Xian Zhan wants to punish you, do you think the ancestor will personally step forward and protect you at the risk of offending Vice Leader Xian Zhan? Young Master Xian, you can't act recklessly. Let's not even talk about how severe the consequences will be. Even if the 9 of us all listen to you and move out to deal with Changyang, we still might not be able to kill him because the 8 protectors around Donglin Yin Shui will definitely treat Changyang's safety with greater importance than Donglin Yin Shui. They'll definitely risk their lives to protect Changyang. Moreover, it's still unknown whether the other 5 protectors will listen to young Master Xian and deal with Changyang. The 4 protectors around Jianshan all tried to persuade him. They all wanted Jianshan to give up on killing Changyang here. Jianshan only had a 4-colored soul core. It was basically impossible for him to kill Changyang, who had 8 protectors with his cultivation. They would still have to take action in the end. However, if they really did lay their hands on Jianshan, they would be doomed once they left the world of Moon and Star. In their eyes, killing Changyang was equivalent to digging their own graves. Moreover, they did not have any deep grievances with Changyang, so they naturally did not want to die for Jianshan. Jianshan's face became uglier and uglier. With the cultivation of the Divine King, There was no need for them to clash with Donglin, Yin Shui's protectors if they really wanted to kill Changyang. All they needed to do was approach Changyang in a friendly manner and deal a fatal blow, and Changyang would die easily. They had declined because they were afraid of offending Vice Leader Xinjiang. Young Master Exing, the matter at hand is to become the chosen saint. Let's search for radiant origin pearls as soon as possible. 3 people will be directly eliminated in the first round. Young Master Xian can't lose in this round. A divine king changed the topic and shifted Jianshin's attention. Yeah, young Master Xian, searching for radiant origin pearls is our top priority right now. There will definitely be radiant origin pearls in the territories of the powerful beasts in the world of Moon and Star. Young Master Xian, you have to move quickly, or the other 4 will get ahead of you. Another protector added. If that's the case, let's set off quickly in search for radiant origin pearls first. Jianshin also knew that it was impossible for these people to kill Jianshin. He stood up with a sunken face and called out before leaving with the 9 protectors. Chapter 23:62. The entrance to the world of stars and moons was still the same mountain where everyone had entered. Elder He Tian slowly opened his eyes and gazed at the 5 candidates. He could not help but smile mysteriously as he murmured to himself, "They've finally thought of dealing with those vicious beasts." That's right. There are indeed radiant origin pearls where the powerful vicious beasts reside. However, those vicious beasts aren't as simple as you imagine them to be. They won't be easy to deal with. It's time for you to suffer. As soon as he said that, Elder He Tian's eyes suddenly narrowed. He suddenly stood up and looked into the distance. Suddenly, he became stern, and he growled, "What powerful spatial pulses! Someone has opened the gateway to the world of Moon and Moons. Who is it?" Before he had even finished speaking, Elder He Tian turned into a silver-white bolt of lightning and shot off into the distance with great speed. Millions of miles away, in a void, the space was violently distorted. Countless cracks were intertwined, and a strong spatial fluctuation was transmitted from this place. This scene continued for several breaths before the space in the sky suddenly shattered like a mirror, revealing a pitch-black spatial passageway. A figure shone with resplendent light as he strode over with firm steps, descending into the world of Moon and Moons through the tunnel. After this figure walked out, the spatial tunnel behind him also disappeared. The shattered space also automatically healed. In a short moment, everything returned to normal. At this moment, the resplendent light around the figure gradually vanished, revealing his true appearance. It was a young man who looked to be in his 20s. He wore a green suit, and his eyes were as bright as the moon and stars. His resolute and handsome face was covered with the kind of wind and frost that could only be left behind after experiencing the baptism of bloody storms and the test of life and death. The young man hovered in the air with his hands behind his back. He glanced around with his resplendent eyes, studying the surroundings. He murmured to himself, "There's a star and a moon in the sky. Looks like I was right. This is the world of Moon and Star, the place where the Radiant Saint Hall chooses their chosen saint." As he said that, the young man glanced to the side casually. A cold smile gradually appeared on his face. "I never thought there would be an elder here. This really is a great gift that the Radiant Saint Hall has prepared for me." With that, a streak of white light shot over with lightning speed. It arrived in an instant, revealing Elder He Tian. At this moment, Elder He Tian's presence surged as the laws of the hallowed revolved around him. He radiated with boundless pressure, but when he saw the young man's face, his face immediately changed. He cried out, "Aoyama, it's actually you." The young man smiled. Coupled with his handsome face, his smile was extremely enchanting and friendly. It was enough to make all the girls in the world fall in love with him. However, the elder of the Radiant Saint Hall, He Tian, did not feel any friendliness at all. Instead, he felt a chill as if he was facing a great enemy. His face became extremely stern at that moment. "I never thought you'd recognize me. My name, Aoyama, is very resounding in the Radiant Saint Hall," the young man smiled. "Young man, how did you enter the world of Moon and Star?" Why have you come here for no reason? Elder Hetion called out sternly. Even though he had condensed a soul tree and was an elder of the Radiant Saint Hall, possessing the cultivation of a primordial realm expert, he dared not be careless before this young man, who was only a divine king. Aoyama's name had already spread across the saint's world. There were very few people who did not know him. He had suppressed all the divine kings in the saint's world and remained as the strongest divine king for many years. There had also been many rumors of him fighting against primordial realm experts. As a result of these glorious rumors, Aoyama had already become regarded as the invincible divine king and a portion of primordial realm experts in the saint's world. He was publicly acknowledged as the strongest divine king among all the divine kings in the saint's world. In the Radiant Saint Hall, Aoyama's name was placed at the top of the wanted list. All the elders knew his name. They all grit their teeth and hated him. They viewed him as a great problem for the Radiant Saint Hall in the future. This was because an elder of the Radiant Saint Hall had died to Aoyama's hands. At that moment, Elder Hetion was personally facing Qing Shan. In an instant, he recalled the various rumors regarding Qing Shan. This caused waves of chilliness to rise in his heart. Is there a need for me to tell you how I enter the world of moon and star? As for why I've come here, I can tell you that. Aoyama looked at Elder Hetion, and a cold smile gradually appeared on his face. He said, I've obviously come for the 5 candidates. This time, I'll make it so that the Radiant Saint Hall has no chosen saint. Aoyama, don't you dare. Elder Hetion's face changed drastically when he heard that. Aoyama, even dared to kill an elder of your Radiant Saint Hall. Why wouldn't I dare to kill a few candidates? However, from today onwards, one more elder will die to my hands, Aoyama sneered. With that, he directly struck out, sending a palm strike towards Elder Hetion. Aoyama's hand possessed a mysterious power that could interfere with the souls of opponents. Faced with Aoyama's palm strike, Elder Hetion immediately felt his soul become unstable. It throbbed, and his vision blurred slightly. He felt dizzy. Martial soul force. Elder Hetion cried out. He bit the tip of his tongue and forcefully cleared his head. The laws of the hallowed gathered around him as he engaged in an intense battle with Aoyama in the air. Elder Hetion's cultivation was only equivalent to a first heavenly layer infinite prime, so he dared not to be careless against Aoyama. He used his full strength right from the start, not holding back at all. However, as soon as he clashed with Aoyama, Elder Hetion's heart sank. When Aoyama struck out, the martial soul force in Aoyama's hand was already enough to affect his soul. However, when he actually clashed with Aoyama, the impact on his soul became even more intense. It felt as if someone had taken a sledgehammer and ruthlessly smashed his primordial spirit. Elder Hetion could fend off Aoyama's attacks, but he was unable to fend off the impact from martial soul force. He could only endure it in an extremely passive manner. Moreover, the impact did not occur once or twice. Instead, he would endure an attack from martial soul force whenever he clashed with Aoyama. If the battle continued, even if he was far more powerful than Aoyama and possessed the ability to defeat Aoyama, his soul would not be able to last until then. Martial soul force really is wondrous. I can't find any way to fend it off. I need to end the battle quickly, or I'll definitely lose, thought Elder Hetion. He did not dare to imagine just how severe the consequences would be if he lost. Chapter 2363. As Elder Hetion and Aoyama engaged in an intense battle in the sky, the group of 10 led by Donglin Yinshui finally found a powerful beast 2 million kilometers away. An intense battle naturally erupted between the two sides. One of Donglin Yinshui's 8 protectors was currently engaged in a battle to the death with a feral beast that was over 30 meters tall and resembled a cow. It was a ferocious beast that resembled a bull. It was extremely huge. It seemed like a small mountain as it stood there, making the hallowed Saint Master who fought against it seem as insignificant as an ant. However, even though the two of them differed greatly in size, they were locked in battle. The laws of the hallowed that originated from the hallowed Saint Master clashed time and time again with a brutal energy within the beast, erupting with deafening booms. Powerful ripples of energy wreaked havoc in the surroundings, stirring up the origin energy in the surroundings. Sand and pebbles were blown into the air as thick cracks appeared on the ground. This was a battle between the Divine King. The ripples from the battle spread to several tens of thousand kilometers away. Without the corresponding strength, it was impossible to approach it. 100 kilometers away, Donglin Yinshui and Jinshan stood side by side as they watched the battle up ahead. The 7 other protectors split up into 7 different directions, forming a circle around Jinshan and Donglin Yinshui. The 2 people at the very front worked together to create an energy shield, blocking the ripples of the battle for Donglin, Yinshui, and Jinshan. If it were not for the protection of these protectors, Donglin Yinshui probably would not have been able to get so close with her 4-colored soul core that was equivalent to a deity. She would have been pushed far away by the shockwaves of energy from the battle between the man and beast. At this very moment, all of them were staring at the intense battle in front of them. Their brows were slightly furrowed. As for the other 7 protectors, their faces had turned somewhat ugly. How can this vicious beast be so powerful? It's clearly only equivalent to an early god king, yet it can match Chun Feng, who has a mid-7-colored soul core. Chun Feng is a hallowed saint master. In the saints' world, hallowed saint masters are much more powerful than fighters at the same level of cultivation. With Chun Feng's cultivation equivalent to mid-divine king, he can easily defeat mid-divine king fighters, yet he's actually unable to defeat an early divine king. How can the vicious beasts of the world of moon and star be so powerful? The 7 protectors who protected Donglin Yinshui and Jinshan all said sternly. What was happening before them had completely overturned their understanding of the world. A strange light flickered through Jinshan's eyes as he stood beside Yinshui. He stared at the huge beast with shining eyes before raising his head to look at the sky from time to time. He was surprised and doubtful. A strand of true chaotic force had fused with his soul, causing it to mutate. As a result, he obtained various abilities. At this moment, he could clearly sense that a strand of the power of the world of moon and star had fused with the beast as it fought. As a result, the beast was able to fight on par with a hallowed saint master who was equivalent to a mid-god king, even though it was only equivalent to an early god king. This beast can actually use the power of the world of moon and star. Jinshan was shocked by this discovery. The light in his eyes flickered as he sank into his thoughts. This was not as simple as controlling the energy of the world. The power of the world of moon and star could fuse with the beast and assisted in battle. This was similar to how the artifact spirit of the Deep Sea Palace controlled the power of the Poseidon art to protect Shao Man in the Poseidon Palace. The power of the Poseidon Palace came from the Poseidon Palace itself. However, the power that had fused with the beast and assisted it in battle came from the world of moon and star. It was definitely not as simple as the origin energy that roamed the world. Does this come from the beast's innate talent, or is the world of moon and star like the Poseidon Palace in the past, where a special existence is purposefully taking care of these beasts? Jinshan sank into his thoughts. If it was the former, then so be it. But if it was the latter, his heart could not help but sink. But I can't eliminate the possibility that the Radiant Saint Hall is behind this. After all, this is a training ground. Since it's a training ground, there has to be a certain level of difficulty and challenge, Jinshan guessed. However, at this moment, Jinshan's eyes suddenly narrowed. He suddenly looked behind him. He could already sense that there were primordial realm experts engaged in an intense battle in the distance. Even though it was very far away, he could still sense the surging energy pulses that erupted from the battle. At that moment, Jinshan's gaze sharpened. His sharp gaze seemed to possess the power to pierce through space, allowing him to see the scene 2 million kilometers away. With Jinshan's current cultivation, 2 million kilometers was no longer an obstruction to his vision. At that moment, he could clearly see Elder He Tion fighting an azure-robed man in the air. Martial Soul Force. It's actually the pulses of martial soul force. Jianshun cried out inside. At that moment, his heart churned, making it very difficult for him to remain calm. He possessed martial soul force in the first place, but he was unable to find the method to cultivate it. As a result, his martial soul force was still weak. Jianshun immediately recognized the martial soul force Aoyama used against Elder Hitian. The protectors behind Jianshun were all focused on the vicious beast up ahead, so none of them noticed the change in Jianshun's emotions. That young man is only a divine king, yet he firmly possesses the upper hand in his battle against Elder Hitian. Such a powerful divine king who possesses martial soul force can only be Aoyama, who ranks first under the divine king, Jianshun thought. Very soon, he deduced the young man's identity, and the light in his eyes flickered. At this moment, the battle between Aoyama and Elder Hitian became even more intense. The pulses of energy they erupted with became even more terrifying. Gradually, the 7 protectors around Jianshun and Donglin Yinshui sensed it. Immediately, the 7 protectors all looked back. Their vision was nowhere near as great as Jianshun's, so they were unable to see so far away with their naked eyes. As a result, they all released the senses of their souls. With their mid-divine king soul consciousness, they could easily cover the entire area. However, the area was filled with violent energy storms at the moment. Their soul consciousness couldn't get close at all. However, they could still sense Elder Hitian's presence and the power of the laws of the hallowed from the storms of energy. This caused all of their expressions to change abruptly. Oh no, there's a primordial realm expert in the world of moon and star. It looks like he's on par with Elder Hitian. That's not a good thing. How is that possible? Haven't all the primordial realm experts in the world of moon and star been purged by the elders? How has one slipped through? If the primordial realm expert can fight with Elder Hitian, he must be an enemy. If Elder Hitian can't last, we'll be doomed. The 7 protectors all cried out as their faces became extremely ugly. Clearly, they had realized the severity of the matter. Chapter 2364. Although Donglin Yinshui was unable to sense the shock waves of the battle in the distance due to her low cultivation, she could hear quite a lot from the cries of the protectors in the surroundings. Her face immediately changed. Quick, send a few more people. End the battle quickly. Donglin Yinshui called out. Out of the 7 remaining protectors, 3 of them immediately charged towards the vicious beast. The remaining 4 were responsible for protecting Jianshun and Donglin Yinshui. The 7 protectors were all hallowed Saint Masters with mid-7 colored soul cores. With the 4 of them working together, they faced a vicious beast that was only equivalent to early Divine King. Even if the vicious beast had received the assistance of the world, making it extraordinarily powerful, it would not be able to last for very long. In just a while, the mountainous beast let out a chilling wail. It was beheaded by a blade of light condensed from the laws of the hallowed by the 4 hallowed Saint Masters. Its soul was wiped out, and its colossal body collapsed on the ground with a huge weight. The ground shook as dust filled the air. Go find the Radiant Origin Pearl. Jianshun immediately called out to Donglin Yinshui the moment the vicious beast died. At this moment, Jianshun became stern as well. The hallowed Saint Masters were unable to see the battle in the distance clearly, but he could see everything clearly. Aoyama's strength was unimaginably great. He actually gained the upper hand against Elder Hitian, who had reached the primordial realm, with his strength at the Divine King. He completely suppressed Elder Hitian. Jianshun could tell with a single glance that Elder Hitian's defeat was only a matter of time unless something unexpected happened. As a result, his heart sank. If Elder Hitian could not stop Aoyama, it would be impossible for the protectors to be Aoyama's opponent even if they worked together. Donglin Yinshui did not hesitate at all when she heard Jianshun's call. She immediately flew towards the vicious beast's lair as a layer of light. Jianshun and the 7 protectors followed closely behind Donglin Yinshui. As soon as they were half a kilometer away from the beast's lair, a gleam of light flashed through Donglin Yinshui's eyes. She had already sensed the existence of the Radiant Origin Pearl, so she immediately sped up, hurrying over with even greater speed. A while later, they entered the beast's lair. It was a huge cave, dark and damp. A thumb-sized radiant origin pearl was embedded in the rock at the very top of the cave. It shone with a gentle light, providing some light to the gloomy cave. One of the protectors extended a finger, and a strand of the laws of the hallowed shot out from his fingertip, shattering the rock above and making the radiant origin pearl fall down. It landed in his hand, and he passed it to Donglin Yin Shui. Donglin Yin Shui stowed the radiant origin pearl away. Just when she was about to continue looking around, Jinshin's voice rang out, "We can't stay here. We need to leave as soon as possible." Donglin Yin Shui frowned when she heard that. She was the candidate, the only person who could make decisions here. Since when was it Chang Yang's turn to give orders? Donglin Yin Shui looked at Jinshin impatiently. Just when she was about to say something, the expressions of the 8 protectors around her all changed. "Oh no, they're approaching us. This is the shockwaves of a battle between primordial realm experts. Once they get too close to us, we'll probably be injured by the shockwaves. Not only will we be injured, but we won't even be able to protect ourselves. No, we need to leave here as soon as possible. They're just too fast. Let's go, or it'll be too late. We'll be caught in the crossfire." The 8 protectors all cried out as they became extremely stern. They had always been observing the situation in the distance with the senses of their souls. Even though they were unable to approach the center of the battle, they could clearly tell where Elder He Tian and Aoyama were. With the 8 protectors' cries, Donglin Yin Shui was no longer in the mood to argue with Jinshin over such a small matter. She immediately left with everyone else. The 8 protectors were clearly uneasy. As soon as they emerged from the cave, they controlled a ball of radiant light to envelop Jinshin and Donglin Yin Shui without saying anything before shooting off into the distance as quickly as they could. At this moment, even Donglin Yin Shui heard the thunderous booms in the distance. They grew louder and louder, getting closer and closer. This made Donglin Yin Shui's heart sink. It seemed like the situation was even worse than she had imagined it to be. The 8 protectors who had brought them along did not say anything at all. Their faces were sunken as they fled into the distance as quickly as they could. They wanted to get away from the primordial realm experts who constantly approached them. The deafening booms grew closer and closer. A pulse of energy that was extremely terrifying to the 8 protectors wreaked havoc in the surroundings, causing the space there to distort. The origin energy in the world of Moon and Star became abnormally chaotic as well. In the distant sky, 2 figures clearly appeared before the eyes of the 8 protectors. Elder He Tian and Qing Shan, who were fighting intensely, had already approached where the 8 protectors could see them. However, when the 8 protectors saw what was happening in the distance, their faces all changed drastically. Intense fear rose up from the bottom of their hearts. What did they see? The 8 of them clearly saw Elder He Tian covered in blood, fending off attacks from behind as he fled in a hurry. Behind Elder He Tian was a young man in azure robes. His face was resolute and cold, and his eyes shone with a chilling light. He pursued Elder He Tian closely. Clearly, Elder He Tian was not the young man's opponent. Aoyama of a martial soul lineage has infiltrated the world of Moon and Star. He wants to kill everyone from the Radiant Saint Hall. All protectors immediately protect the candidate and flee. Find a way to contact the outside world. At this moment, Elder He Tian's old voice rang out. His hoarse voice was filled with urgency and some weakness. He seemed to be powerless. Aoyama was just too powerful. With his control over martial soul force, he could attack Elder He Tian's soul every time he clashed with him. Elder He Tian was defeated soon after the battle began. He was heavily injured, so all he could do was flee madly. What? Aoyama of the martial soul lineage has infiltrated the world of Moon and Star. It's actually a member of the martial soul lineage. We're in trouble now. Even though Aoyama is at the peak of the Divine King, he can already kill primordial realm experts. We're not his opponent. Run. The 8 protectors all paled. They did not dare to remain here. Immediately, They fled into the distance as quickly as they could with Jinshin and Donglin Yinshui. Chapter 2365. They had already heard of Aoyama's name. Even though they hated Aoyama to the core, they dared not resist at all when they actually saw him. The only thought they had was to flee, and flee as far away as possible. It would be best if they could flee to a place where Aoyama could not find them and hide. Even Donglin Yinshui struggled to remain composed after being enveloped by the light of the protectors. Her delicate face paled slightly as deep unease filled her eyes. Jinshan was the only person who remained composed among them. However, his brows were tightly furrowed at this moment. Let's gather up with the other 4 groups quickly and combine all the power of the Radiant Divine King before working with Elder Hition. It's not impossible for us to fight against Aoyama, Jinshan said calmly. However, the 8 protectors turned a deaf ear to Jinshan's words. They directly acted like they did not exist. Not only did they not rush towards the other 4 groups, but they even fled into the distance instead. Jinshin could see slivers of undisguised fear in their eyes, as well as some despair. Jinshan sighed inside when he discovered this. He was extremely disappointed in these people. Out of the 5 groups, there were a total of 44 Divine Kings. If these Divine Kings worked together, they would be a great force. Coupled with Elder Hition, he believed that they would be enough to fend off Aoyama. Even if they were still not Aoyama's opponent, they would not be completely annihilated by Aoyama. Even if there was a tiny difference, he could secretly assist them when the time came. They were completely capable of fending off Aoyama. It was even possible for them to suppress Aoyama. However, he had underestimated the fear the protectors felt towards Aoyama. They did not have the courage to fight against Aoyama at all. They did not dare to fight against Aoyama, so they remained by Jinshin's side the entire time. As a result, Jinshin could not find an opportunity to assist them secretly even if he wanted to. Elder Hition, on the other hand, changed directions after bellowing out. He flew off in another direction to draw Aoyama away. As for Jinshan, he glanced past Donglin Yinshui's group indifferently as a cold smile appeared on his face. Afterwards, he continued in pursuit of Elder Hition. In his eyes, the Divine King of Light was nothing to worry about. No matter how they fled, they would not be able to escape from him in the end. However, Elder Hition was an elder of the Sacred Hall, so it was extremely likely that he possessed a way to contact the outside world. As a result, killing Elder Hition was his top priority right now. Aoyama gradually traveled into the distance as he pursued Elder Hition. The booms from their battle grew further and further away as well. In the end, they completely vanished. The 8 Divine King of Light who fled with Jinshin and Donglin Yinshui did not stop. They did not slow down at all as they fled even further away from the world of Moon and Star. Along the way, they even flew over the territories of a few vicious beasts, causing the vicious beasts there to chase after them madly. However, they ignored them as well. They only cared about fleeing. Sigh. Jinshin sighed inside. He had still underestimated the protector's fear of Aoyama, which made him feel extremely helpless. He had already sensed the existence of several radiant origin pearls along the way, but he could only watch them pass by in the end. He could not warn them at all. The flight lasted for half a day. Half a day later, the 8 protectors finally stopped and landed in a hidden forest. Junior Yinshui, Junior Changyang, do you have any way to contact the outside world? As soon as they stopped, one of the 8 protectors, the Lord of the Cloud Mist Peak, Lu Fan, asked. He was very stern. The other 7 protectors all looked at Jinshin and Donglin Yinshui eagerly. They did not even have the courage to fight against Aoyama. Even the only elder in the world of Moon and Star was not Aoyama's opponent. Now, they could only place their hopes on Jinshin and Donglin Yinshui, 2 juniors with extraordinary backgrounds. They hoped that they could contact the outside world and let the Sacred Hall learn about the situation inside so that they could send even more powerful elders to kill Aoyama. Donglin Yinshui shook her head gloomily. The world of Moon and Star is a miniature world. None of the methods I know can pass through the obstruction of the miniature world and reach the sacred hall. I can't contact anyone in the outside world. The 8 protectors were unable to hide their disappointment when they heard that. They all looked at Jinshin. One of them looked at Jinshin eagerly and asked urgently, Junior Changyang, you should have a way to contact Vice Leader Xianzhan, right? Jinshin also sighed gently. I'm the same as Donglin Yin Shui. We're separated by a world, so we can't contact the outside world at all. Probably only Elder He Tian has a way to contact the sacred hall here. We can't do anything, Donglin Yin Shui added. She was also heavy-hearted. The 8 protectors' faces became ugly when they heard that. Elder He Tian was currently being hunted down by Aoyama. He was busy running for his life, so how could he have the time to contact the outside world? They had no idea how much longer he could last. As soon as they thought about how they would all face Aoyama's merciless pursuit, they immediately felt extremely uneasy and fearful. You can consider my suggestion before. If you keep delaying it, it really might be too late, Jinshin said again. In his opinion, this was the only way for the Radiant Saint Masters to fend off Aoyama. The 8 Radiant Saint Masters all hesitated. After a moment of silence, they all expressed their opinions and began an intense discussion about Jinshin's suggestion. Only 2 of them agreed with Jinshin's suggestion. They wanted to gather with the other 4 groups and then work with Elder He Tian to deal with Aoyama using all the power of the Divine King. There was also a portion of them who objected. They believed that even if they gathered everyone's power, they would not necessarily be Aoyama's opponent. After all, Aoyama's name had already become deeply ingrained in their hearts. They were unwilling to face Aoyama in an open battle. They believed that they should use the opportunity when Aoyama was focused on Elder He Tian to flee far away and hide themselves. This would continue until the world of Moon and Star opened up again a year later. The final portion of people remained hesitant. They struggled to make a decision. At this moment, Jinshin and Donglin Yin Shui were no longer of much use. At a time like this, even Donglin Yin Shui's identity as the Divine King struggled to influence the decisions of the Radiant Divine King. This was because Donglin Yin Shui was not a true chosen saint, while the 8 Radiant Divine King were only her protectors. Their main mission was to protect her, not to serve as her retainers. Jinshin felt helpless as he listened to the arguments of the Divine King. He was in no mood to listen to them. He made his way to a nearby tree all by himself before leaping onto the branch. His body was as weightless as a leaf as he sat down on a branch that was only as thick as a wrist. He stared ahead as light erupted from his eyes. His gaze became extraordinarily sharp at that moment, directly piercing through space and looking into the distance. Chapter 2366. But very soon, Jinshin's eyes dimmed and returned to normal. Elder He Tian and Aoyama were just too far away. They had exceeded the limits of his vision. Jinshin looked back and glanced at the 8 Divine King who were still arguing nearby, as well as the helpless Donglin Yin Shui. After hesitating slightly, he carefully expanded the senses of his soul, extending it forward rapidly. Jinshin's original level of cultivation far exceeded the 8 protectors. Coupled with the fact that his soul had mutated, the senses of his soul were so powerful that the 8 protectors could not compare to it at all. As a result, in just a short while, Jinshin's senses of his soul had already reached 5 million kilometers away. However, he did not stop there. Instead, he continued to expand. 6 million kilometers, 7 million kilometers. Very soon, Jinshin's senses of his soul had reached 10 million kilometers away. Only then did he finally find Aoyama and Elder He Tian. They were still fighting, erupting with powerful ripples of energy. The ripples of energy affected Jinshin's senses of his soul quite a bit, but they were unable to block out the senses of Jinshin's soul like the 8 protectors. As a result, Jinshin could clearly see the battle between Aoyama and Elder He Tian. Elder He Tian's presence was extremely weak. He was extremely injured, and he had lost a large amount of essence blood. He was just skin and bones now. Clearly, This was the price he had paid for using various secret techniques. He was finding it more and more difficult to block Aoyama's attacks, and he constantly vomited blood. He was already at the end of his rope. Before him, Aoyama's attacks were still extremely sharp. His presence was so powerful that it caused the surroundings to churn. Even though Elder He-Tion was also covered in blood, he did not seem weak at all. When the senses of Jinshin's soul reached him, a sliver of light immediately flashed through Elder He-Tion's dim eyes. As if he had grasped onto a life-saving straw, he immediately called out to the sky, "I am an elder of the Radiant Saint Hall. Fellow, no matter who you are, please lend me a hand. Our Radiant Saint Hall will be eternally grateful." On the other hand, Qing Shan had clearly sensed the senses of the soul that had spread over from afar. A chilling light immediately flashed through his cold eyes as he looked at Elder He-Tion like he was looking at a dead man. He coldly said, "Stop dreaming. No matter who comes today, they won't be able to save you." As soon as he finished speaking, Qing Shan's green robes fluttered in the wind. His long hair danced in the wind. A terrifying aura emanated from his body, filling up the entire area. Soul Mountain Seal. Qing Shan crossed his arms in front of his chest and unleashed a powerful secret technique. With a low roar, a blurry and hazy illusory mountain condensed. It gave off a powerful pressure as it smashed towards He-Tianzhong with a terrifying power that could suppress the heavens and earth. Elder He-Tion bellowed out and also used a secret technique. He burned what little essence blood he had left and condensed the laws of the hallowed at the cost of his vitality. He shot it out with lightning speed as a resplendent spear. This was already Elder He-Tion's final attack. After unleashing it, he completely withered away. He was on the verge of death. He had used everything he had against Aoyama, but before Aoyama's martial soul force, he felt powerless. He was unable to find any way to resist the attacks on his soul, so he suffered a crushing defeat in the battle. He did not even manage to injure Aoyama severely. Boom! With a great sound, Elder He-Tion's final attack collided with Aoyama's illusionary mountain. It immediately erupted with a boom, causing the mountain to shake. However, it only shook. Not only did the illusionary mountain fail to disperse, but it also continued to fall without slowing down at all. It enveloped Elder He-Tion with a suppressive force. "Fellow Taoist, please lend a hand." Elder He-Tion let out a shrill roar. However, in the end, before the mysterious person in the dark could do anything, the soul mountain imprint formed by Qing Shan had already smashed into Elder He-Tion. The soul mountain seal was extremely profound. It did not harm Elder He-Tion's body. Instead, it directly struck Elder He-Tion's soul. Elder He-Tion's dim soul immediately collapsed, dispersing with the wind. The soul of the Radiant Saint Hall's Elder He-Tion had been wiped out. After Elder He-Tion's death, the senses of Jinshin's soul receded like the tide, vanishing in a single instance. As for Qing Shan, he glanced around after killing Elder He-Tion. His cold eyes flickered with a soul-stirring coldness as he murmured, "Who is this person?" The senses of his soul seemed to be slightly different from ordinary people. Even I can't sense the location of his soul when he's purposefully hiding it. That's right. In terms of the strength of his soul, he's only on par with this elder of the Radiant Saint Hall. If he's not from the Radiant Saint Hall, then so be it. But if he is, then don't blame me, Aoyama, for being merciless. Jinshin slowly opened his eyes as he sat on a tree 10 million kilometers away from where Elder He-Tion had died. He stared ahead sternly. He had already witnessed Aoyama's strength. He was much more powerful than Shui Yunlin back in Poseidon Palace. Even compared to himself, Aoyama was no weaker. Now that Elder He-Tion was dead, the hallowed Saint Masters in the world of Moon and Star had completely lost the right to fight against Aoyama. Naturally, Jinshin heard Elder He-Tion's cry for help before he died. It was not that he did not want to save him, but he was 10 million kilometers away, so there was nothing he could do even if he wanted to. Even if he really did help, he had to consider whether his identity would be exposed or not. Otherwise, It would be an unwise action, where he would end up harming himself while saving others. You don't seem to be afraid at all. At this moment, Donglin Yin Shue's voice rang out from behind Jianchen. She had also leapt onto the tree and landed on a leaf gracefully. She stared at Jianchen's back with rather mixed feelings. At this moment, Donglin Yin Shue discovered to her great surprise that Jianchen's back seemed abnormally tall and straight. She could actually sense an indomitable aura from his back. However, Donglin Yin Shue secretly shook her head soon afterwards. She dismissed the extremely laughable and childish thoughts in her head. She had no idea whether to laugh or cry over this feeling. After all, the person sitting before her was a low-level Radiant Saint Master who was nowhere near as powerful as her. What's the point of being afraid? I've been through many situations that are even more despairing than what you're facing right now. In my eyes, the danger you face right now really is nothing, Jianchen said calmly. He remained seated on the tree, without moving as he stared ahead. A sliver of surprise appeared in Donglin Yin Shue's eyes when she saw Jianchen's composure that even the 8 Divine King Saints did not possess. She could not help but study Jianchen properly. At that moment, she suddenly discovered that she had never truly seen through Jianchen. However, as soon as she thought about how Jianchen had approached her with ulterior motives, Donglin Yin Shue felt extremely repulsed. Changyang, now that we're in dire straits, do you regret becoming my 9 protector very much? Donglin Yin Shue asked. Her voice was very soft, and her tone was very calm. However, it still possessed a sliver of coldness. I don't regret it, because I want to enter the Tower of Radiance and become the retainer of the 5 candidates. That's the only choice, Jianchen said. His voice was very calm, and it was completely emotionless. Donglin Yin Shue frowned. Just when she wanted to ask why Jianchen had to go through the Vice Leader's medallion to enter the Tower of Radiance directly, Jianchen glanced in the direction of the 8 Divine King Saints and said, They've already finished their discussion. Let's go and see what they've decided. With that, Jianchen slowly floated down from the tree and made his way towards the 8 protectors. As a result, Donglin Yin Shue could only swallow her words. Author's note, that's all for today's update. Moreover, Shanghua Mu Er's picture provided by a reader has been posted on Xiaoyao's official account. It really is very beautiful and close, so it has received the approval of many readers. To those who want to see it, please follow Xiaoyao's official account on WeChat, Xinxing Xiaoyao 110. Or you can directly search for the pseudonym Xinxing Xiaoyao. Once you follow him, you'll be able to find the reply, historical information. Moreover, there are pictures of various characters posted in the past.